Creak. The door to the main hall of the Dark Een Palace was pushed open from the inside. A handsome young man dressed in snow-white clothes walked out of the main hall with 2 respectful servants in tow. He first looked at Jian Wushuang and shook his head contemptuously. Then, his eyes inadvertently fell on Zhou Sha, who was behind Jian Wushuang. His eyes suddenly lit up and there was a flash of surprise. He narrowed his eyes as if he had an idea. However, he did not say anything and walked past Zhou Sha and Jian Wushuang. "Take care, Sky Glory Holy Sun." The disciple respectfully sent the young man off. Then he looked at Jian Wushuang, extended his hand, and invited him in. He said with a smile, "Sir Wushuang, let's go. The palace master is waiting for you." Jian Wushuang nodded and walked in. Just as Zhou Sha was about to follow him, the disciple of the Dark Een Palace stepped forward and stopped her. He said, "Young lady, please stop. My palace master only allowed Sir Wushuang to enter and didn't mention you." When Zhou Sha heard this, she could not help but frown. She did not want to stop there. She did not know why, but the way the Sky Glory Holy Sun looked at her just now made her feel uneasy. She had seen that look on Yandan's face before. "It's fine, Zhou Sha, just wait for me here. With me here, no one can hurt you." Jian Wushuang looked at Zhou Sha and said indifferently. Then he stepped into the hall. Hearing Jian Wushuang's words, Zhou Sha felt relieved and did not say anything. Creak. The wooden door of the hall closed again. Jian Wushuang walked in with his head held high and his chest out. The room was rather dark, and a stooped old man wrapped in gray-white bandages with only his right eye exposed was sitting cross-legged in front of a tea table. This person was the palace master of the Dark Een Palace. "Wushuang, right? Come, sit." He stretched out his hand to the opposite side of the coffee table, indicating for Jian Wushuang to sit down. "All right." Jian Wushuang nodded and sat opposite the palace master of Dark Een Palace. "Wushuang, Ba Huang has already informed me of the general situation. He says that you will be the next sect master of the God-refining sect." The palace master of Dark Een Palace said calmly. He poured a cup of tea for Jian Wushuang and continued, "I believe Ba Huang has told you about the situation between the God-refining sect and the Dark Een Palace. Although we have some grudges recently, it is not to the point of not seeing each other for the rest of our lives. After all, we are of the same origin and have the same ancestral teachings. We were once the closest people. Therefore, when the banquet begins, I will personally go to your God-refining sect to witness your Ascension ceremony." "All right." Jian Wushuang did not say much. He reached out his hand and took a sip of the tea. The two of them chatted for a while before the palace master of Dark Een Palace waved his hand and said tiredly, "All right, Wushuang. This palace master knows that you're about to ascend the throne and that you're busy with official matters. I won't keep you any longer. When I arrive at your God-refining sect, I'll have a detailed meeting with you." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang knew that the palace master of Dark Een Palace was going to drive him away. "Palace master, please rest well. I'll take my leave first." After saying that, Jian Wushuang put down his teacup, stood up, and walked out of the door. Looking at Jian Wushuang's back, the palace master of the Dark Een Palace snorted and shook his head in disdain. He pushed open the wooden door and walked out of the dark room. He frowned. Zhou Sha had disappeared. "Lord Wushuang, your maid has been invited to the Divine Wine Pavilion by the Sky Glory Holy Sun." The disciple of the Dark Een Palace who was standing guard outside quickly came over and said, "The Sky Glory Holy Sun? They went to the Divine Wine Pavilion." Jian Wushuang could not help but frown again. He believed that he knew a little about what kind of person Zhou Sha was. She was also the personal maidservant that the God-refining sect master had personally instructed him to do. It was impossible for her to suddenly follow someone else. He had heard of the Sky Glory Holy Sun before. He was publicly acknowledged as the #1 genius in the Void universe. He had not even cultivated for a Void era, but he had already become a 3-star Void Master. His background was also from the Sky Glory Holy Land, one of the most powerful orthodoxies in the Void universe. He could be said to be favored by the heavens and earth and blessed by great fortune. In terms of status in the Void universe, he was not inferior to Jian Wushuang in the Divine Power universe. In fact, he might even be better. Bring me there. Jian Wushuang frowned and said, Yes. The disciple saw the coldness in Jian Wushuang's eyes and could not help but raise his eyebrows. He quickly led Jian Wushuang to the Divine Wine Pavilion. To him, the Sky Glory Holy Sun was a dragon-like figure in the sky, and Jian Wushuang was also a behemoth that he could not afford to provoke. However, along the way, he could not help but hint to Jian Wushuang. It's probably because the Sky Glory Holy Sun has taken a fancy to your maidservant. You should quickly do him a favor and hand your maidservant over to the Sky Glory Holy Sun. It'll also form a good relationship with the Sky Glory Holy Sun. Although the disciple of the Dark Yin Palace did not make his words very clear, that was what he meant. He did not notice that Jian Wushuang's eyebrows were getting colder and colder. After a while, the disciple led him to the Divine Wine Pavilion. The Divine Wine Pavilion was a place of entertainment built by the Dark Yin Palace. It contained all kinds of top-notch divine wine in the Void universe. Usually, when the disciples of the Dark Yin Palace were not cultivating, they would invite a few friends to the Divine Wine Pavilion to relax. Cultivation was important, but so are mortal desires and pleasure. After entering the Divine Wine Pavilion, the disciple brought Jian Wushuang to a private room on the second floor. Jian Wushuang gently knocked on the door of the private room and stepped in. There were 3 people sitting at a table. They were the Sky Glory Holy Sun, Zhou Sha, the head disciple of the Dark Yin Palace, Yin Shan, and the 2 old slaves standing behind the Sky Glory Holy Sun with their heads lowered. Seeing Jian Wushuang come in, Zhou Sha's eyes flashed with a look of pleading for help, while the Sky Glory Holy Sun's mouth slowly opened into a smile. Are you the new sect master of the God-refining sect, Wushuang? The Sky Glory Holy Sun said with a faint smile. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent. That's me. The Sky Glory Holy Sun smiled brightly and extended his hand. Come, come, come. Sit, Wushuang. Let's have a few cups together. After Wushuang sat down, the head disciple of Dark Yin Palace beside the Sky Glory Holy Sun, Yin Shan, was in charge of pouring him a cup of wine. The Sky Glory Holy Sun raised his wine cup and raised it to Jian Wushuang. He squinted his eyes and smiled. Wushuang, this is your maidservant, Zhou Sha, right? You wouldn't mind if I asked her to drink a few cups of wine, would you? Jian Wushuang looked at him indifferently and did not reply. Jian Wushuang's disregard made the Sky Glory Holy Sun's hand, which was raising his cup, freeze. However, he did not get angry. Instead, he continued, Come, everyone, let's have a toast. As soon as he finished speaking, Yin Shan, who was in charge of accompanying him, quickly drank it in one gulp. Zhou Sha looked at Jian Wushuang and was about to speak, but Jian Wushuang gave her a look to calm down. Then Jian Wushuang also drank the cup of wine. Jian Wushuang put down the wine cup and looked at the Sky Glory Holy Sun, the number 1 genius in the universe. He wanted to see what tricks this person was up to. In the Divine Wine Pavilion's Sky Room number 1, everyone raised their cups and drank together. Under the seemingly harmonious scene, a trace of coldness could not be concealed. That's more like it. The Sky Glory Holy Sun looked at Jian Wushuang and Zhou Sha. They both drank the wine in their cups and smiled. The mortals in the world all say that we are immortals but forget immortal. We are still human, after all. I have an open personality all my life, uninhibited and wanton. I like the rivers, mountains, beauties, and wine in cups. This time, I'll make it clear that no one is allowed to use void energy to cleanse the alcohol, and we must drink it the natural way. You must accompany me to get drunk for 3,600 rounds. How about it? As soon as he said this, the head disciple of the Dark Yin Palace, Yin Shan, who was in charge of accompanying them, quickly added, The Holy Sun is right. This time, Lord Holy Sun has finally come to our Dark Yin Palace. We will definitely drink to our heart's content with you. Good, good, good. You're quite smart, kid. The Sky Glory Holy Sun stretched out his hand and patted Yin Shan's head with a smile, as if he was petting a little dog wagging its tail. Then, He raised his wine cup to Josha and said, "Come, Lady Josha, have another cup with me." Upon hearing this, a hint of hesitation flashed across Josha's already red face. This divine wine was made from the 100 brew fragrant fruit and was specially made for star-level void warriors to drink. She was only a star-level void warrior and had long been unable to hold her liquor. Josha wanted to refuse, but when she saw the sky glory holy sun's cold eyes, she was shaken. She had already figured out the identity of the young man in front of her. The current holy son of the sky glory holy land. The sky glory holy sun. He was the #1 genius in the universe. The sky glory holy land was one of the strongest immortal orthodoxies in the void universe. There was more than one 6-star void master in the holy land. Although the god refining sect was also one of the top forces, it was still far inferior to the sky glory holy land. This was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the god refining sect master was about to step down and Jian Wushuang would be the new sect master. If she offended the sky glory holy sun, it would be equivalent to offending the sky glory holy land. At that time, not to mention how the sky glory holy land would suppress the god refining sect, even the god refining sect, with Jian Wushuang as the sect master, would be unable to do anything if they spread the word in the universe. Gulp. Thinking of this, Josha gritted her teeth, raised her glass, and drank it in one go. Suddenly, a flame seemed to burn in her body. Josha felt her blood boiling and her head spinning. She felt extremely uncomfortable. That's the way. The sky glory holy sun smiled in satisfaction and raised his glass again. I didn't expect Miss Josha's alcohol tolerance to be so good despite her low cultivation. Come. Give me some face and have another cup. Seeing this, Josha finally could not help it. Her expression changed slightly, but she still forced a smile on her pretty face and said in a nice voice, "Lord Holy Sun, I really can't drink anymore." "You can't drink it?" Hearing this, the sky glory holy sun's eyes slowly narrowed. The smile on his face disappeared, and his voice became cold. "Lady Josha, it seems like you're not giving me any face?" Upon hearing this, the smile on Josha's face froze. "Lord Holy Sun, that's not what I meant." She was about to explain when the sky glory holy sun interrupted her and continued, "Miss Josha, even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for the sect behind you and for your sect master Wushuang, right?" Upon hearing this, Josha's body trembled. This undisguised threat was already obvious. Josha looked at the expressionless and silent Jian Wushuang and could not help but laugh bitterly in his heart. From the beginning to the end, whether it was in the god refining sect or outside, she was just a chess piece in the hands of the big shots. "I'll drink." Stretching out her trembling hand, Josha picked up the glass and was about to drink it. Seeing this, the sky glory holy sun's face once again had a warm smile as he nodded in satisfaction. Beside him, Shan also had an evil smile on his face. He knew very well what the sky glory holy sun wanted to do. At this moment, Josha was holding a wine glass and was about to drink it when her right hand was grabbed by a large hand. A strong force came from this large hand, and she was unable to move. Josha raised her head in a daze and only saw Jian Wushuang's angular face, which was cold and indifferent. The next moment, Jian Wushuang said in a cold and deep voice, "Your face. I can fight 10 trash like you with one hand. Do you think you're worthy of talking about face in front of me?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was shocked. Shan's face was filled with shock. He did not expect that Wushuang from the god refining sect would be so presumptuous. Did he know who the sky glory holy sun sitting in front of him was? How audacious! Shan slammed the table and wanted to teach this ignorant thing a lesson on behalf of the sky glory holy sun. He wanted to take credit and show off. However, before he could do anything, Jian Wushuang's divine light grew and he looked at him. Whoosh! In an instant, Shan felt a great horror of life and death coming at him. Jian Wushuang's cold eyes were like 2 divine swords that could split the sky and earth and tear the endless sky apart. He felt like he was pierced and killed thousands of times. Thud! Shan fell to the ground on his butt. A chill ran from his back to his head, making him feel like he had fallen into an ice cellar. When he looked again, his entire back was already drenched in a cold sweat. The smile on the sky glory holy sun's face froze, and his face slowly darkened. Wushuang, even your sect master doesn't dare to speak to me like this. Are you seeking death? Kneel down and apologize. Give your maidservant to me, and I'll take your words as frivolous and drunken words. I won't take it to heart. After saying that, the sky glory holy sun stood up and looked down at Jian Wushuang. However, just as he got up, his body was still not straight. I kneel. Jian Wushuang sneered and activated his Chaos Overlord body. He suddenly stretched out his right hand and smacked the sky glory holy sun's head. You kneel. Rumble. Endless power burst out from Jian Wushuang's palm. The sky glory holy sun felt as if a million mountains were pressing down on him. He knelt on the ground, and his knees left a web of cracks on the ground. As far as Jian Wushuang was concerned, as long as he was not an invincible supreme, no one could defeat him. The sky glory holy sun was only at the 3-scar level. He was even inferior to Luo Ming, the chief of the Crimson Whale Gang. How would he dare to be impudent in front of him? Young master, Lord Holy Sun. The 2 old slaves guarding the door of the private room were furious. Just as they were about to charge at Jian Wushuang said indifferently, Tarot! Crack! A crack appeared in the void behind Jian Wushuang. The divine corpse of Tarot, who was covered in a large black robe, took a step forward and stretched out his hands to attack the 2 old slaves. Boom! The divine corpse of Tarot punched out with 2 fists. Instantly, endless power burst forth. Tao patterns circulated in his hands, turning into violent and surging sword chi that smashed into the chests of the 2 old slaves. These 2 servants of the sky glory holy sun had only just entered the scar level. How could they be the opponents of the Tarot divine corpse? This was Supreme Tarot. Even if the current Supreme Tarot corpse was only at the Pyramid Supreme stage, how could they be able to contend against it? In an instant, it was as if the 2 old slaves had been hit by 2 cosmic warships. Their bodies immediately crashed through the door of the divine wine pavilion and flew out. Whoosh! 2 black dots flickered in the sky. The 2 old slaves were punched by Tarot divine corpse, and they were sent flying so violently that they not only left the Dark Een Palace, they even flew out of the entire Dark Een star field. Instantly, the head disciple of Dark Een, Shan, who had been paralyzed with fear and was sitting on the ground, could not help but be dumbfounded as he watched this scene. His entire body trembled. What did he see? The sky glory holy sun's head was pressed down by Wushuang's palm, and he was forced to kneel. The 2 old servants of the sky glory holy sun were sent flying out of the Dark Een star field by Wushuang's divine corpse. This was too violent. Then, the head disciple of Dark Een shivered. Something big happened. Something big was about to happen. Wushuang, you're looking for death. The sky glory holy sun's handsome face was twisted to the extreme. He roared and activated all the void power in his body. Suddenly, the sky glory holy sun's void power was like a high-speed whirlpool, spinning with a loud bang. Waves of power that could destroy stars burst out from his body like a tide, rolling and surging, trying to push away Jian Wushuang's right hand that was pressing on his head. Oh! Jian Wushuang could not help but raise his eyebrows when he felt the impact force. As the #1 heavenly pride of the void universe, the sky glory holy sun was indeed quite capable. In terms of power, the force of the collision was not weaker than that of a 4-scar void warrior. If Jian Wushuang had not broken through to the intermediate supreme level, he might have been in a predicament as well. But it's a pity that the current you is far from enough. Jian Wushuang snorted and the veins on his right hand bulged. He grabbed the sky glory holy sun's head and threw him out of the divine wine pavilion, smashing his body through the window. Seeing this scene, Jiusha could not help but feel a little worried. Wushuang, this person is the sky glory holy land's holy sun after all. We won't bring you any trouble by doing this, right? It's fine. Jian Wushuang shook his head and took a step forward. He appeared outside the divine wine pavilion and looked down at the sky glory holy sun, who had been thrown to the ground. The commotion between the two immediately attracted the attention of all the Dark Palace disciples inside and outside the divine wine pavilion. What? The sky glory holy sun was actually thrown out. Who is so bold? You dare to attack the sky glory holy sun? For a moment, everyone was shocked. Then they saw Jian Wushuang step out of the divine wine pavilion. He was walking in the void with an expressionless face. It's him, the new sect master of the God-refining sect? Didn't this person just break through to the scar level not long ago? How did he manage to throw the sky glory holy sun out? Who knows? It's probably a sneak attack. After all, the sky glory holy sun is the #1 heaven's favorite expert in our universe. He's invincible in the same realm. No matter what, Wushuang shouldn't be the sky glory holy sun's opponent. Everyone started whispering to each other. Wushuang, you lowly worm. You deserve to die. In the divine wine pavilion, the sky glory holy sun's expression was twisted. The surging killing intent almost materialized and circulated in his eyes. He was born with pride. Whether it was his extraordinary family background or his own invincible luck, or his unprecedented talent, all of them made him develop a high and mighty attitude, and he never respected anyone. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? Wave after wave of hatred washed through his body. In a short moment, the sky glory holy sun's eyes turned red, and he wanted to tear Jian Wushuang into pieces. With a low growl, the sky glory holy sun's body glowed brightly, and he charged toward Jian Wushuang. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang looked indifferent and said, I've already said that all I need is one hand to deal with you. The next moment, with his left hand behind his back, Jian Wushuang formed a fist with his right hand and punched the sky glory holy sun. This punch could shatter stars and destroy the sun, and overturn mountains and rivers. Countless rays of golden light emitted from Jian Wushuang's right fist. It was as if he was pushing a rolling sun or a golden carriage that was driving out of the sun and crashing toward the sky glory holy sun. Crash! The sound of a mirror shattering could be heard in the air as ripples spread out. Quickly retreat! Instantly, the many disciples of the Dark Palace who were watching the show retreated and flew into the universe. Boom! This punch finally landed on the sky glory holy sun's body. In an instant, the sky glory holy sun was sent flying at a speed faster than when he had charged forward. The entire ground started to shake. However, very quickly, a dark yellow barrier of light faintly appeared in the sky above the palace. It released a restrictive power that suppressed the shockwaves of the battle as much as possible. Otherwise, Jian Wushuang's punch alone would have been enough to blow up the sun. The aftershock that spread out would have been enough to cause the entire Dark Palace to collapse. Ah! Wushuang, you should be killed. The sky glory holy sun crawled up from the ground. His handsome face was twisted with madness, and his eyes were bloodshot. He charged at Jian Wushuang again. You're so stubborn. Jian Wushuang shook his head. He took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of the sky glory Saint Sun as if he had teleported. His right fist struck out like a mad dragon, turning the surrounding area into a raging sea of tornadoes. Bang! The Tao patterns on Jian Wushuang's right fist circulated and gave off a trembling sound, like a giant axe that split the sky and earth. He smashed the sky glory holy sun's head. You're the sky glory holy sun, right? Today, I'll teach you how to behave. In the palace master's main hall of the Dark Palace, the eyelids of the cross-legged Dark Palace master twitched. What's happening? He slowly opened his eyes and looked up. Thud, 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 thud. At this moment, a disciple of the Dark Palace ran in with a panicked expression. Palace master, it's bad. The next sect master of the God-refining sect, Wushuang, is fighting with the sky glory holy sun outside the divine wine pavilion. What? Dark Palace master's eyes narrowed slightly. Then, divine light flashed in his eyes. His gaze pierced through the netherworld void and saw the scene of Jian Wushuang beating the sky glory holy sun. Bastard! Instantly, the palace master's face turned ashen. With a slight movement of his shoulder, he disappeared from the main hall. Outside the divine wine pavilion, smoke and dust filled the air. The power that was enough to destroy the galaxy and shatter the stars was like a violent beast. It roared, but before it could spread out, it was blocked by the formation of the Dark Yin Palace. Wushuang, Wushuang, the sins of the heavens can be forgiven, but the sins of man cannot be lived. You're courting death. The sky glory holy sun stood up from the ground, trembling. His hair was disheveled, and his nose and eyes were bleeding. He no longer looked like the confident and handsome holy sun from before. Instead, he looked like a vicious man who had been forced into a dead end. However, he was in a sorry state. A vast, terrifying, and indescribable power began to gather on his body. Wisps of thick red light began to gather in his chest. The aura that seeped out directly annihilated the surrounding starry sky and turned it into chaos. When the surrounding disciples of the Dark Yin Palace saw this, they felt a chill in their hearts. Not good. It's a void explosion. The sky glory holy sun has already lost his mind. He's going to fight to the death. Stop? With what? Hurry up and report to the palace master. Only the palace master can solve this problem. For a moment, the spectators outside the divine wine pavilion were in a panic. Void explosion? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. He had been in the void universe for some time. In his opinion, the void universe was almost the same as the divine power universe. The only thing worth mentioning was the accompanying divine power that every void warrior in the void universe had, void explosion. The void explosion could instantly erupt over 100 times the power of one's entire body. It was the greatest killing move of the void warriors of the void universe. I'm sorry, I can do it too. Crack. The next moment, Jian Wushuang raised his arm, spread his fingers, and pointed in the direction of the sky glory holy sun. In his palm, the chi started to spin like a gyroscope. The speed of the spin was getting faster and faster. Boom! In the end, a small black whirlpool that looked like a black hole appeared in Jian Wushuang's palm. The divine power in Jian Wushuang's body started to boil. Then, it gathered toward his palm in a frenzy and gradually formed a terrifying black ball the size of a fist. A black void explosion? There's actually a black-colored void explosion? Void explosion is divided into 7 grades. The lowest grade is white, the second grade is gold, and the third grade is purple. What grade is black? How come I've never heard of it before? I don't know. However, the power compressed within this black void explosion was truly terrifying. He was even stronger than the Sky Glory Holy Sun. The Sky Glory Holy Sun is a 9th grade void explosion. The disciples of the Dark Yin Palace were dumbfounded when they saw this. Black. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered. Back when Jian Wushuang had swallowed the void power crystal core that Elder Ban Shan had given him, he had awakened the void explosion. However, this was the first time he had used it after such a long time. As for its power, Jian Wushuang was still looking forward to it. Go to hell. At this moment, the Sky Glory Holy Sun erupted first. The red ball in his chest shot toward Jian Wushuang like a cannonball. In an instant, the chi dispersed and the earth cracked. The light shield above the Dark Yin Palace, which was like an upside-down bowl, suddenly rumbled. Crack, crack, crack. Like a broken mirror, the palace-protecting formation, which blocked all the shockwaves, let out an unpleasant sound of breaking. Wisps of chi energy seeped out from the light shield, causing the entire Dark Yin Palace to shake violently. Just as Jian Wushuang was about to release the void explosion, "Stop!" a voice came from 100 miles away. Then, a hunched figure covered in bandages took a step forward, which seemed to cause ripples in the void. He stood between Jian Wushuang and the Sky Glory Holy Sun. Bang! Bang! One of the bandages burst open, revealing a shriveled, greenish-gray palm. The palace master reached out with his right hand and caught the Sky Glory Holy Sun's destructive ball with his bare hands. Whiz! The Sky Glory Holy Sun's illusionary round ball fell into the Dark Een Palace Master's palm like a marble. It spun rapidly and sent out countless sparks. However, the palm of the Palace Master of Dark Een Palace seemed to be made of molten iron from the 9 heavens. No matter how much power the void ball exploded, it could not hurt him at all. In the end, the speed of its rotation gradually slowed down, and it was crushed by the Palace Master of Dark Een Palace. The aura of a 6-scar Void Master emanated from the Palace Master's body. In the face of this aura, both the Sky Glory Holy Sun and Jian Wushuang were as small as ants. 6-scar, or rather, an invincible supreme, was far too different from other levels of Void Masters. They were not on the same level at all. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered, and he withdrew the power of the void explosion in his palm. Dark Een Palace Master, you're going to stop me for this brat? However, the Sky Glory Holy Sun did not give up. He turned his eyes and stared at the Dark Een Palace Master. Ah! The Palace Master of the Dark Een Palace sighed. He was a mighty lord of a region in the universe and a 6-scar Void Master, so he naturally did not need to care too much about the Sky Glory Holy Sun. However, the Sky Glory Holy Sun did not just represent himself. He also represented the behemoth that was the Sky Glory Holy Land. The Sky Glory Holy Land was one of the most powerful immortal orthodoxies in the Void universe. Its historical background was almost the best in the entire Void universe. Even if the God-refining sect and the Dark Een Palace combined, they probably would not be a match for the Sky Glory Holy Land. On the other hand, the Sky Glory Holy Sun had amazing potential. In the future, he would definitely be on equal footing with him or even stronger. If not for the fact that he had no other choice, he really would not have stepped out to get involved in this mess. However, if he did not come out, the entire Dark Een Palace would probably be destroyed. Holy Sun, give me some face and let this matter go. How about it? The Palace Master said to the Sky Glory Holy Sun. The Sky Glory Holy Sun did not say anything. Instead, his face darkened. Although he was arrogant, he was not a brainless fool. He was indeed very talented, and he had the support of the Sky Glory Holy Land. Even though the Dark Een Palace Master was polite to him, the Sky Glory Holy Sun knew that he did not have the ability or qualifications to be impudent in front of a 6-scar Void Master. After the Palace Master finished speaking, he looked at Jian Wushuang and his face turned ashen. Wushuang, is this how that Ba Huang fellow taught you to do things? I think you want to drag the God-refining sect into a land of eternal damnation. Jian Wushuang did not say anything and just shrugged his shoulders. Wushuang, Ba Huang hasn't left yet. He can still protect you. However, once he leaves, you'll be in charge of the God-refining sect. If you do this, you'll bring disaster to the God-refining sect sooner or later. Dark Een Palace Master looked at Jian Wushuang deeply and said, this sentence came from his heart. Even though the Dark Een Palace and the God-refining sect had been on bad terms in recent years, they were still of the same origin and were an existence that was connected by their origins. He hoped to suppress Jian Wushuang to achieve his goal of suppressing the God-refining sect in the future, but it did not mean that he really wanted Jian Wushuang to cause a disaster. I'm only returning the favor, Jian Wushuang said indifferently. Stubborn and unrepentant. The Palace Master of Dark Een Palace grunted and did not say anything else. In the end, Jian Wushuang was about to become the sect master of the God-refining sect. In terms of status, he was on equal footing with him. To put it bluntly, he, the Palace Master of Dark Een Palace, was not qualified to teach Jian Wushuang a lesson. This was because it was equivalent to slapping the face of the entire God-refining sect. The scene fell into silence. The Sky Glory Holy Sun's gaze was cold as he looked at Jian Wushuang and then at the Palace Master of Dark Een Palace. Finally, he took a deep breath and said coldly, Wushuang, this time, for the sake of Dark Een Palace Master's face, this Holy Sun will not argue with you. But don't be happy too soon. This Holy Sun will remember today's matter. In the future, this Holy Sun will make you regret it. The Sky Glory Holy Sun snorted and took a step forward. He turned into a beam of light and shot into the sky, disappearing from the Dark Een Palace. After the Sky Glory Holy Sun left, Many disciples of the Dark Yin Palace looked at Jian Wushuang in surprise. In the battle between Jian Wushuang and the Sky Glory Holy Sun, although neither of them had used their full strength, they had watched Jian Wushuang beat the Sky Glory Holy Sun with one hand. This Wushuang's realm must be lower than the Sky Glory Holy Sun's, right? From this, didn't it mean that Wushuang's talent was even more terrifying than the Sky Glory Holy Sun's? Dark Yin Palace Master also turned to look at Jian Wushuang, but his expression was not too good. Wushuang, you should leave. Our Dark Yin Palace does not welcome you. Once your Ascension ceremony begins, I will be there, the Palace Master of Dark Yin Palace said coldly. All right. Jian Wushuang nodded and did not say much. The divine corpse of Taro, who was standing behind Jian Wushuang, took a step forward and stepped on Jian Wushuang's back. Then, his entire body disappeared, as if he had become Jian Wushuang's shadow. Then, with a wave of his sleeve, Jian Wushuang left the Dark Yin Palace with Zhou. After flying into the universe, Jian Wushuang released the giant bone bird and it flew toward the Divine Life Palace. The two of them did not notice that not long after they flew out, a white-robed figure walked out from behind a planet. Wushuang, right? No one who I want to kill has ever survived. On the back of the giant bone bird, Jian Wushuang stood with his hands behind his back, his face expressionless. Zhou stood behind him with a look of shame on her face. In her opinion, it was because of her that Jian Wushuang had such a disaster. Wushuang, I'm sorry. I've caused you trouble again. Zhou lowered her head and clutched the corners of her clothes tightly. She was prepared to be scolded by Jian Wushuang. After all, that was the Sky Glory Holy Sun. Behind her was the Sky Glory Holy Land, one of the most powerful forces in the universe. It has nothing to do with you. However, Jian Wushuang shook his head. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou could not help but be stunned. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but Jian Wushuang had already sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. Time flew by. A few months later, Jian Wushuang returned to the God-refining sect. From a distance, Jian Wushuang could see the God-refining sect's decorations. It was a festive scene. However, there was a sense of solemnity hidden in this festive atmosphere. It seemed that the God-refining sect had been preparing for the Ascension ceremony all this time. After entering the God-refining sect, Jian Wushuang went to the sect master's hall first and told him what had happened in the Dark Yin Palace. After hearing that, the God-refining sect master's eyes widened and he said, "You beat up the Sky Glory Holy Sun?" After getting Jian Wushuang's confirmation, the God-refining sect master could not help but sigh. The Sky Glory Holy Land was an existence that even he felt pressured about. He had not expected that Jian Wushuang would attract such a disaster before he became the sect master. If he left, what would the future of the God-refining sect be like? For a moment, the God-refining sect master could not help but regret it. Was it the right decision to hand the God-refining sect over to Wushuang? However, now that the Ascension ceremony was almost ready and the news had been released, if they changed the person at the last minute or asked Wushuang to apologize, wouldn't the God-refining sect become a joke? Wushuang, what should I say about you? She's just a maid, so why bother? The God-refining sect master shook his head and sighed. Forget it. The Sky Glory Holy Land's patriarch happens to be at the place where I'm going. I'll go talk to him. Dozens of days later, all the major powers in the universe sent their emissaries to the God-refining sect to congratulate them. Some of the weaker sects even had their sect masters come personally. They were afraid that the God-refining sect would feel that they were being disrespectful. The God-refining sect master called for Jian Wushuang to follow him and entertain the guests. He explained to him the close relationships between the God-refining sect and the various sections. In this complicated communication, Jian Wushuang's Ascension ceremony finally began. As one of the top forces in the Void universe, the God-refining sect had a good reputation. Basically, all the sects in the universe, big and small, had sent gifts, including the Sky Glory Holy Land and the other orthodoxies that were as famous as the Sky Glory Holy Land. Everyone came and congratulated the new king. During the coronation ceremony, the emissaries from the various major forces gathered in the God-refining sect square. It was a dense crowd. After the Void Master Ba Huang gave a speech, he handed Jian Wushuang a token that represented the position of the God-refining sect master. From then on, the old king retired and a new king rose. From today onwards, Wushuang will be the 7th sect master of the God-refining sect. On the high platform, the Void Master Ba Huang said in a deep voice. His voice was like rolling thunder that resounded in everyone's ears. Then he strode away. Jian Wushuang walked out of the light and stood in front of the crowd. Immediately, countless people raised their heads and fixed their eyes on the expressionless Jian Wushuang. He's Wushuang? He's so young. I heard that this person joined the God-refining sect and became the new sect master not long after. What a genius! He's become a sect master and an overlord at such a young age. He has a bright future ahead of him. This is how a man should be. Countless people exclaimed in admiration. Someone else said, "Don't you know? Wushuang had started fighting with the Sky Glory Holy Sun in the Dark Yin Palace." Although the situation of this battle had been sealed by the Dark Yin Palace and no one knew how the battle was going, Wushuang had definitely offended the Sky Glory Holy Sun. I really don't know what the future will be like. The Sky Glory Holy Sun has always been vengeful. I'm afraid that after 8 desolations is gone, the God-refining sect will suffer. A series of discussions sounded. Jian Wushuang stood on the high platform expressionlessly. He looked around and said in a deep voice, "From today on, I, Wushuang, will be the 7th sect master of the God-refining sect. From now on, I will protect the God-refining sect and ensure its prosperity for all eternity. It will prosper for a long time." Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, everyone in the God-refining sect, regardless of whether they were new disciples or grand elders, knelt down. "We welcome the 7th sect master of the God-refining sect, Wushuang. We welcome the God-refining sect master, Wushuang. Welcome, God-refining sect master Wushuang." In an instant, the entire God-refining sect square was in an uproar. Tens of thousands of God-refining sect disciples knelt on the ground and shouted in unison. The sound of their greetings to Jian Wushuang turned into rolling sound waves that rose to the sky and resounded throughout the entire God-refining sect. At that moment, Jian Wushuang had changed into a sect master's robe. The golden thread at the corner of the robe reflected a bright light under the scorching sun. He had a delicate face and cold eyes, but he exuded a profound calmness that made people feel dignified without being angry. His eyes, in particular, were so sharp that no one dared to look him in the eye. "Get up!" Jian Wushuang's expression was calm as he raised his right hand. All of a sudden, all the disciples stood up. The Ascension ceremony of the God-refining sect gradually came to an end. After Jian Wushuang greeted all the forces that came to congratulate him, he personally sent them off. Among them, Dark Yin Palace Master's expression was not too good. Before Jian Wushuang could send him off, he snorted coldly and left the God-refining sect. After that, it was the arrangements made by the Void Master Ba Huang before he left. In the sect master's hall, there were only Jian Wushuang and Void Master Ba Huang. "This should be the last time I'll be sitting on this seat." Void Master Ba Huang sat on the throne that only the sect master could sit on. He placed his hands on the black and gold armrests and rubbed the fine patterns on the armrests with his thumb. He was slightly emotional. Jian Wushuang stood beside him and lowered his head in silence. "Wushuang, I haven't interacted with you for a long time, but the impression you give me is that you're a meticulous and shrewd person. This is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. I can vaguely feel that you seem to be hiding something in your heart. However, I can't guess or figure it out. I'm not someone who will get to the bottom of things. I only hope that, no matter what, you have already taken over my position and become the sect master of the God-refining sect. In that case, it is best that you put the interests of the sect first and your personal interests second. Don't do anything that will bring the God-refining sect into the abyss. To be honest, Yan Dan is not as good as you in terms of magnanimity, talent, and comprehension. But if he doesn't die, I will still pass the position of sect master to him," Ba Huang said slowly. This was the first time he had been so honest with Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was silent, but he sighed in his heart. Ever since he had joined the God-refining sect, both the sect master and Elder Mifeng had left him with a good impression. It was a pity that they were destined to stand on opposite sides in the future and meet with swords. At that time, Jian Wushuang would stand against Void Master Ba Huang and the others in the off-world battlefield. What would it be like? Void Master Ba Huang did not expect an answer from Jian Wushuang. Instead, he continued, "Wushuang, the place I'm going to this time is my mission. It's extremely dangerous, and it's very likely that I won't be able to return. Therefore, please help me look after the God-refining sect." "All right." Jian Wushuang nodded. The next day, early in the morning, Void Master Ba Huang and the white-haired, burly old man left the God-refining sect. At the gate of the God-refining sect, Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes as he watched Void Master Ba Huang and the white-haired burly old man leave. In the end, Void Master Ba Huang had not told him about the Void Forbidden Land. At the same time, Jian Wushuang believed that the God-refining sect's foundation was not so simple. "I'll still have to rely on myself to slowly explore," Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. At this moment, an excited voice rang in Jian Wushuang's mind. "Young master, we've discovered a new situation." "Oh!" Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and did not reply immediately. Instead, his eyes lit up and he walked back to the sect master's hall. "Sect master, we pay our respects to Lord Sect Master." The two disciples in charge of guarding the mountain gate quickly knelt down and respectfully said, "Yes, guard the mountain gate." Jian Wushuang nodded, then took a step forward and soared into the sky. The land under Jian Wushuang's feet shrank. In just a few seconds, Jian Wushuang landed in the sect master's hall. In the hall, some servants who were in charge of serving the sect master were cleaning the hall. When they saw Jian Wushuang enter, they immediately knelt down. "All of you can leave," Jian Wushuang said indifferently. "Yes." The servants all left. Jian Wushuang waved his hand to close the heavy door of the sect master's hall. Then, he turned around and entered the sleeping palace that only the sect master could enter. There were many books in the bedroom, all of which were about the secrets of the God-refining sect and all kinds of secret techniques of refining corpses. In the middle, there was a yin-yang 8 trigrams formation, and countless void power and corpse chi gushed out from the center of the formation. Jian Wushuang sat down cross-legged and started to absorb the void power. With the void power crystal, Jian Wushuang's body had an additional conversion machine that could convert all the divine power he absorbed into void power. The 8 trigrams formation under Jian Wushuang not only controlled the sect-protecting formation of the God-refining sect, but it could also absorb all the corpse chi and void power in the sect. In other words, as Jian Wushuang sat on the formation eye of the 8 trigrams formation, all the void power and corpse chi of the entire God-refining sect would be poured into him. What kind of terrifying number was this? However, Jian Wushuang was not in a hurry to activate the formation. Instead, he sent a message to the chief of the Crimson Whale Gang, Luo Ming. "Tell me in detail," Jian Wushuang said indifferently. "Yes." Luo Ming's voice was filled with excitement. "Young master, our Crimson Whale Gang is responsible for keeping an eye on the sect members of the various top factions. In the past few days, the sect masters of those top factions or the ancient elders who have been in deep sleep have all awoken. They are all rushing toward the Void Forbidden Land. In the Void Forbidden Land, we also found that Void Master Guheng and the others were all in seclusion. Something big is definitely going to happen." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. From the looks of it, the second great catastrophe was about to begin. After taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice, "I see. Have you prepared the map and markings of the Void Forbidden Land I asked you to prepare last time?" "Young master, the map was completed the day before yesterday." Luo Ming nodded hard. "All right, send some people from the sect to the God-refining sect. Remember, this person must be a direct descendant of yours. The one I planted the restriction on that day." Jian Wushuang nodded and replied, "I understand. I'll make the arrangements immediately." Luo Ming quickly replied, "Okay, go and make the arrangements. If anything happens, contact me immediately." After giving this order, Jian Wushuang cut off the communication. Within the sect master's palace, Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on the 8 trigrams yin-yang formation, his eyes flickering. It seems that the second great catastrophe is about to begin. I have to increase my power one more time before it begins. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and muttered to himself. Although Jian Wushuang had never experienced the terror of the Great Catastrophe War, he had heard about it from Cosmos Gods and the others. The tragedy of this great catastrophe simply could not be described with words. In the Great Catastrophe, supreme martial artists were like ants. They could die with a flip of their hands. Only top supreme realm martial artists could barely protect themselves. That was the stage for the invincible supremes. Only an invincible supreme would be able to slaughter his way through the great catastrophe without fear. However, even an invincible supreme was in danger of dying. At the very least, in the last great catastrophe, the number of invincible supremes who had died in the divine power universe could be counted with 2 hands. Jian Wushuang's current strength was, at most, the strongest fighting power below an invincible supreme. He was still far from being a true invincible supreme. Formation activate. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and activated the 8 trigrams formation. Suddenly, the patterns on the 8 trigrams formation gushed with white light. Then, the formation began to rotate. A vast and surging void power gushed madly into Jian Wushuang's body with the rotation. The pure and vast void power almost caused Jian Wushuang to explode in an instant. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang was a super-perfect life form with an amazing capacity and chaos overlord body, so he avoided the situation of exploding from the void power. Swallow! Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed, and he immediately devoured the vast void power like a giant beast with its mouth wide open. Boom! 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 Jian Wushuang's entire body let out a muffled thunder-like roar. Then, after this vast and turbulent void power was refined, it was transformed into pure divine power. Jian Wushuang's aura started to rise. The sect master's main hall was completely silent. Without Jian Wushuang's order, no one dared to step in. 3 months later, Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes and a ray of light flashed across his eyes. 3 months of cultivation. The increase in divine power is more than 3,000 years of cultivation. Jian Wushuang lowered his head and muttered to himself. In the past 3 months, Jian Wushuang had absorbed and refined almost all the void power of the God-refining sect. In the past 3 months, not only had he completely stabilized his intermediate supreme realm, but he was also only 1 step away from reaching the peak of the intermediate supreme realm. What kind of terrifying speed was this? If he had not received a message from Luo Ming of the Crimson Whale sect, informing him that the Crimson Whale sect disciple in charge of sending the map of the Void Forbidden Land had arrived at the God-refining sect, Jian Wushuang would at least have continued his cultivation and shot all the way to the peak of an intermediate supreme realm. Taro, Jian Wushuang said indifferently. A black-robed figure suddenly walked out from the shadow behind Jian Wushuang. Then, Jian Wushuang ordered the corpse to sit at the position of the 8 trigrams formation. Waves of corpse chi were poured into the corpse. The injuries that the corpse had suffered from Great Void Divine Emperor's attack, which could normally only recover gradually with time, instantly recovered. Not only that, but the aura of the corpse of the Supreme Tarot also started to become stronger, and it was gradually moving toward the intermediate supreme realm. The next step is to raise the Tarot Divine Corpse to the intermediate supreme realm. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes, pushed open the door of the master's bedroom, and strode out. Sect Master! The 2 disciples who were guarding the door were in a daze. When they saw Jian Wushuang walk out, they could not help but shiver and quickly half-knelt to salute. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly at them in response. Then, he stepped out and disappeared at the door of the sect master's hall. Hey! Did you notice that Wushuang is becoming more and more like a sect master? He gives off an unfathomable feeling that no one would dare to offend her. After Jian Wushuang left, a disciple who was in charge of guarding the door whispered, "What do you mean you're becoming more and more like a sect master? Wushuang is the sect master, all right? But you're right, you don't know how cold I felt when the sect master looked at me just now, as if I had no secrets in front of him. The other disciple glared at the disciple who had just spoken, and then whispered, "Ah, we've been guarding this sect master for 30 million years, and we're just gatekeepers. Wuxia has only been here for a short time, and he's already become the sect master. The difference between people is really too great." The disciple who spoke earlier sighed. Outside the gate of the God-refining sect, a man with a protruding mouth and ape-like cheeks was anxiously pacing back and forth in front of the God-refining sect's main gate, scratching his ears and cheeks. "Ah, didn't I say that I came to find young Master Wuxia? Quickly let me in." This person was naturally the one Luo Ming had sent to deliver the map of the Void Forbidden Land. However, from the looks of it, this person seemed to have encountered some trouble. "Shut up. Wuxia is the Lord Sect Master of our God-refining sect. How can you call him by his name? How could he have become the young master of someone like you?" The two young disciples who were responsible for guarding the mountain gate immediately frowned and scolded. "Hurry up and leave. You have a pointed mouth and monkey cheeks and small eyes. You're sneaky and don't look like a good person. If you don't leave, don't blame us for killing you," another disciple said in disdain. When the Crimson Whale Gang disciple heard this, he laughed in anger. "Damn it! I'm not a good person just because I'm a little ugly?" His eyes flickered with fury. This ugly-looking Crimson Whale Gang disciple snorted coldly, thinking to himself, "If this wasn't our young master's property, I would have killed you two little kids today." Taking a deep breath, the Crimson Whale Gang member suppressed his anger and smiled apologetically. "The two of you, please make an exception and go to the young master." "No, I'm going to report to your sect master." "Aya, why are you so stubborn? It seems like you really want to be killed by us." The two God-refining sect disciples raised their eyebrows and rolled up their sleeves, ready to explode. "All right, the two of you may leave." At this moment, a calm voice sounded behind them. The two disciples turned their heads and looked behind them. When they saw who it was, their expressions changed and they knelt down in fear. Disciple Luo He and Disciple Shirlang greet Lord Sect Master. "I, Feng San, pay my respects to the young master." "All of you rise." Jian Wuxia raised his hand to the three of them. Instantly, the two disciples in charge of guarding the door and Crimson Whale Gang disciple, Feng San, stood up respectfully. "The two of you continue to guard the mountain gate. You follow me." Jian Wuxia gave a few instructions and immediately led Crimson Whale Gang's disciple, Feng San, toward the sect master's hall. "All right?" Feng San responded with a smile and immediately glared at the two disciples who were in charge of guarding the gate triumphantly. Then he followed Jian Wuxia and flew toward the sect master's hall. Looking at the backs of Jian Wuxia and Feng San, the two disciples who were guarding the gate couldn't help but look at each other. That guy just now really knows the sect master. From the looks of it, sect master seems to have other forces outside. After returning to the sect master's hall, Jian Wuxia dismissed the servants who were in charge of cleaning again. He then turned around and sat on the main seat, saying, "Feng San, give me the map of the Void Forbidden Land." "All right," he said. Feng San first responded with a flattering smile. Then he fumbled around and took out a jade cylinder from his sleeve and handed it to Jian Wuxia. "Young master, the markings and maps here were all written and drawn by me personally. There are basically no errors. Please take a look." "All right." Jian Wuxia nodded and spread the jade cylinder open. His eyes suddenly lit up. The map of the Void Forbidden Land was extremely detailed. A total of 99 void cracks were clearly marked. In addition, the guards of each void crack and the ups and downs of each mountain range were all accurately depicted. It could be said that there was nothing more detailed than this map about the Void Forbidden Land. The 87 void cracks on the ground were marked with a red tick, with the word unknown written on it. Jian Wuxia could understand that Feng San had failed to enter the 87th void crack. Naturally, he would not force Feng San to do so. Jian Wuxia continued to read and found a long list of names and detailed remarks. The first one was the illusionary divine Guhang whom Luo Ming had told him about previously. The ancient Void Master had made his name 30,000 void eras ago, when he had disappeared from the universe. His cultivation base had been at the 6 marks, and he was skilled in using techniques. The 9-finger emperor had made his name 50,000 void eras ago. His cultivation base had been at the 6 scar when he had disappeared from the universe, and he was skilled in using techniques. What is this? Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed as he looked at Feng San. Feng San hurriedly replied, "Young master, these are the auras of a few void masters that the Crimson Whale Gang discovered in the crack in the void. We've identified them after that. Although it's not perfect, it should be the number of void masters stationed in the void forbidden land." Jian Wushuang did not speak. However, a tsunami was set off in his heart, and he could not help but reveal a look of joy. This name list was too important. He could use this list and the recent movements of the top forces to speculate the battle power of the void universe in this great catastrophe, so that the divine power universe could make preparations as soon as possible. After closing the bamboo tube, Jian Wushuang looked at Feng San with admiration in his eyes and said, "You're not bad." Hearing this, Feng San was immediately delighted. He immediately smiled and said, "This is what I should do. As long as young master is satisfied, it's fine." After that, the two of them exchanged a few more words before Jian Wushuang sent Feng San away and let him continue to watch the forbidden void land. After Feng San left, Jian Wushuang sat on the throne alone, his eyes flickering. Now that the great catastrophe was about to begin, he had to make a trip back to the Divine Power Universe personally and pass the news to Cosmos God so that the Divine Power Universe could make preparations. However, if he wanted to go back, there were 2 problems that were more difficult to solve. First of all, he had just ascended the throne not long ago, and there must be many eyes watching him. If he left now and did not show up for a long time, it was inevitable that he would be speculated about and suspected by people with ulterior motives. Secondly, Jian Wushuang had no idea how to return to the Divine Power Universe. According to this bamboo map, when I left the Divine Power Universe and entered the Void Universe, the void crack that appeared was the 23rd one. That's why I didn't meet the true experts of the Forbidden Void Land at the beginning. They're all gathered at the 87th void crack. From this, it could be deduced that besides the 87th void crack, which could return to the Void Universe, the 23rd void crack could also do the same. However, all of this is just my prediction. If there's a slight mistake, it'll be a disaster. Jian Wushuang massaged the space between his eyebrows and pondered. Whether this prediction is correct or not, I can only find out after I go to the Void Forbidden Land. Other than that, there is the first question. How do I leave the God-refining sect without being suspected? Jian Wushuang gradually frowned as he pondered. A moment later, his eyes lit up as if he had thought of something. The next moment, Jian Wushuang stood up and walked toward the sect master's bedroom. There were countless secret skills and books in the chamber. Jian Wushuang then took out a book and started to read it. After a while, he put the secret skill back on the shelf and walked toward the divine corpse of Tarot. Jian Wushuang sat down cross-legged on the back of the corpse and pressed his palms on the back of the corpse. Boom! Suddenly, countless void power gushed out of Jian Wushuang's hands and poured into the body of Tarot Divine Corpse. Suddenly, a strange scene happened. The appearance of the Tarot Divine Corpse changed rapidly. His tall and burly figure became a little thinner, and his stiff and numb face gained some color and vigor. His facial features changed slightly and he looked like Jian Wushuang. In a short moment, 2 Jian Wushuangs appeared in the sect master's bedroom. Not only did they look exactly the same, but even their auras were the same. Even those who were closest to Jian Wushuang would not be able to tell which one was the real Jian Wushuang. The divine corpse of Supreme Tarot stood up as if he had come to life. With a smile on his face, he bowed to Jian Wushuang and said, "Master." Jian Wushuang nodded in satisfaction. The secret manual he was reading just now was the incarnation technique that the God-refining sect had cultivated. He injected his consciousness and aura into the divine corpse, which had a heart-blood connection with him, making it like an avatar. In the past, in the God-refining sect, there were many disciples who were about to die and used this secret technique to cause themselves to be reborn. This secret skill was much more overbearing than ordinary secret skills that could create an incarnation. For example, Jian Wushuang could now give a simple command and make it move freely. He could also instantly shift all of his consciousness to the corpse of Supreme Tarot, making it his second life. Within the sect master's palace, there were two identical Jian Wushuang, one standing and the other sitting with the same aura. It was extremely strange. You stay here and help me look after the God-refining sect. Jian Wushuang stood up, looked at the divine corpse of Tarot, and said indifferently, "All right, master can leave now. I'll stay here and look after the God-refining sect." Jian Wushuang, who was transformed from Tarot divine corpse, replied with a smile, "Yes." Jian Wushuang nodded and then left the bedroom in big strides. That night, Jian Wushuang went to where Elder Ban Shan was and asked him to look after the God-refining sect. When Elder Ban Shan heard that Jian Wushuang was about to return to the divine power universe, he was stunned and his murky eyes dimmed. If not for the fact that they had no choice, who would be willing to wander around and leave their home? "Jian Wushuang, you go. I will take care of the God-refining sect." After taking a deep breath, Elder Ban Shan suppressed the throbbing in his heart and spoke in a deep voice. "Then I'll have to trouble you, Elder Ban Shan." Jian Wushuang looked deeply at Elder Ban Shan and nodded. Then Jian Wushuang walked out of Elder Ban Shan's bedroom. When he reached the door, Jian Wushuang stopped and said softly without turning back, "Just bear with it for a little longer. Once the great catastrophe war is over, it will be time for us to truly return to the universe." "All right." A smile appeared on Elder Ban Shan's face. After Jian Wushuang left, Elder Ban Shan raised his head and looked at the boundless void through the ceiling. I'm looking forward to that day." At the entrance of the God-refining sect, the two disciples of the God-refining sect were still in charge of guarding the gate. So boring. It'll take another 100 years for the next shift," the disciple on the left complained. "Ha ha ha. If you have any complaints, you can talk to Lord Sect Master," the disciple on the right replied with a smile. The two of them joked around and didn't feel that bored anymore. Whoosh! At this moment, the two of them suddenly felt their vision turn black, as if a black shadow had passed by them. A slight gust of wind blew at the corners of their clothes. What happened just now?" The disciple on the left rubbed his eyes and looked around in confusion, but he did not see anything. "It's probably because of the wind," the disciple on the right replied with a shrug. After that, the two of them completely forgot about what had just happened and continued to joke around. At the same time, in the star field outside the God-refining sect, a figure in a loose black robe and a hood that covered half of his face, only revealing his chin, turned back to look at the God-refining sect, then strode away. His initial speed was not fast, but it got faster and faster. In the end, he was like a thunderbolt, tearing the vast sky apart and shooting toward the void forbidden land. At the same time, in the void forbidden land, outside the 87th crack, a solemn ceremony was being held in a rainforest. Countless white bones were piled together, forming a tall platform. Each white bone was carved with mysterious patterns, emitting a monstrous evil chi. On the high platform, a white-haired brawny old man with a bare upper body held 3 long incense sticks in his hand and kept sticking them into the gaps between the white bones. Under this high platform, more than 10 men and women in black robes with solemn expressions stood respectfully. If an expert from the Void Universe saw these black-robed people at this time, he would definitely be extremely shocked and his expression would be aghast. This was because these black-robed men had all once reached the peak of the Void Universe. They had looked down on all living beings and ruled over all beings. Each of them had a glorious past, and each of them had once dominated an era. However, in the end, they all silently disappeared in the long river of time. He did not expect that they would actually be gathered together at this moment. Wisps of invisible chi exuded from their bodies and gushed toward the high platform. On the high platform, the white-haired burly old man put on a bronze mask on his face after he inserted the black incense in his hand. He held a black wooden staff in his hand and began to dance. Rumble! The sky seemed to be pulled by something and began to spin rapidly. The smoke from the burning incense shot straight into the sky. "Great Lord Void God, I'm your citizen. Tuha? Can you feel our summoning? Wake up, your people need your protection. The white-haired old man looked at the sky as he chanted. At first, his voice was still weak, but each sentence was higher than the last. In the end, his voice exploded like thunder. Awaken! Boom! A huge explosion was heard in the sky. At this moment, the sky cracked open. An extremely terrifying aura, along with billowing black smoke, spread down from the crack in the sky, as if a demon had arrived. The terror of this aura was far beyond what an invincible supreme could compare to. It was enough to make the world tremble, and even the Almighty had to bow down to it. Lord Void God! In an instant, the white-haired old man's eyes gushed with extreme joy and excitement as he knelt down. Below the high platform, the dozen or so top experts who had once ruled over the world were also overjoyed and knelt down toward the sky. Lord Void God! Demonic fog filled the sky, and an extremely ancient and deep voice came from the torn sky. Once I awaken, I will defeat all my enemies in the world. Cosmos God! Wait for me. At the same time, at another entrance of the void forbidden land, a black-robed figure was moving quickly. Suddenly, what's the situation? Jian Wushuang stopped in his tracks. A vast, ancient, and extremely terrifying aura came from the other side of the sky, which almost made him kneel down. He only felt a little bit of this aura, but all his hair stood on end. A great horror of life and death surged in his heart. That's the 87th crack. What happened there? Jian Wushuang looked at the 87th crack in horror. However, the other side was covered by the black demonic fog. Even though Jian Wushuang used his divine power to look at it, he could not see through it. I have to hurry up. I'm afraid that the great catastrophe war will come faster than I thought. Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth. His speed, which was already extremely fast, soared again. His whole body was like a flash of flowing light, and he instantly crashed into the void forbidden land. Supreme Gongyang, who had communicated with him earlier, was already waiting at the 23rd crack. Seeing Jian Wushuang flying over, Supreme Gongyang's expression turned ugly. He took a step forward and said, Jian Wushuang, did you feel the terrifying aura just now? Jian Wushuang nodded with a serious expression and said, Let's go. We'll return to the Divine Power Universe first and report this matter to Cosmos God. At the 87th crack, the summoning of the priest continued, and waves of pressure spread out in an overwhelming manner. Jian Wushuang and Supreme Gongyang had already stepped into the 23rd crack. Whoosh! The crack in the void twisted and swallowed Jian Wushuang and Supreme Gongyang. Then the two of them disappeared. The familiar feeling of dizziness hit them again. When Jian Wushuang and Supreme Gongyang opened their eyes again, they were already in the starry sky. It was the same starry sky, but the aura in the universe was different. Jian Wushuang and Supreme Gongyang looked at each other, and their hearts stirred. Sure enough, other than the 87th crack, the 23rd crack could also allow him to go back and forth between the Divine Power Universe and the Void Power Universe. The two of them were about to walk toward Cosmos God Camp. A loud shout suddenly exploded. Intruder! Go to hell! Rumble! A white dragon with 6 claws was riding on the clouds and rushing over at high speed. In his mouth there was a huge fireball, as if he had the sun in his mouth. Stop! Supreme Gongyang's expression changed. He suddenly recalled that the two of them had just come out of the crack in the void. They must have been mistaken as people from the void universe. However, before he could explain, the fireball had already come crashing toward them at high speed. It created a broken passage in the void and headed straight for Jian Wushuang and Supreme Gongyang. Just the pressure and scorching temperature of this fireball was far beyond what Supreme Gongyang could withstand. Just as Supreme Gongyang's face was filled with despair, Jian Wushuang, who was standing beside him, took a step forward and grabbed the hilt of the Tarot Divine's sword at his waist. Sword draw. Buzz. A shocking bolt of lightning, like a river of stars, directly split the huge fireball into two. The flames spread out, turning Jian Wushuang and Supreme Gongyang's faces red. Clang. After putting away the Tarot Divine's sword, Jian Wushuang raised his head and looked at the six-clawed white dragon in the huge dragon's eye. He said calmly, "Long Qing, I haven't seen you for so long. I didn't expect you to still be so reckless and stupid." Crack. The six-clawed white dragon that was tens of thousands of feet long flashed with white light and turned into a young man with two horns on his head. He was wearing a white robe with golden edges. Jian Wushuang. Long Qing squinted his eyes and snorted. Jian Wushuang's long ears returned to their original state and he transformed his void power into divine power. He returned to his human appearance. This guy didn't die in the void universe. Moreover, this guy seems to have become stronger again. Long Qing's eyes were filled with surprise. This time, other than Cosmos gods who knew the details of Jian Wushuang's trip to the void universe, the rest, even the two disciples of Cosmos gods, were not clear about the details of Jian Wushuang and the others in the void universe or what they had done. Therefore, Long Qing thought that Jian Wushuang had died in the void universe. Whoosh, whoosh. After that, several more figures arrived. When they saw that it was Jian Wushuang, they were stunned and their eyes were filled with disbelief. It's Jian Wushuang? Jian Wushuang has returned from the void universe? Jian Wushuang is the first person to return from the void universe, right? Everyone was shocked. Jian Wushuang frowned and ignored them. He said indifferently, "Please make way." After saying that, Jian Wushuang and Supreme Gongyang turned into two streams of flowing light and instantly streaked across the sky, heading toward the base camp where Cosmos gods were. This time, the reason why Jian Wushuang did not choose to send a message to Cosmos God, but instead came back personally was that it was a matter of great importance. For example, the map of the Void Forbidden Land and the deployment of the fighting forces, as well as the information that Elder Banshan had spent tens of thousands of chaos cycles gathering. Jian Wushuang would only be at ease if he personally handed it over to Cosmos God. After a few hours, they had arrived at the base camp. After not seeing each other for hundreds of years, there was not much difference in the main camp. The only difference was that it had become more solemn. The people in charge of patrolling the main camp all had serious expressions. It seemed that they had also guessed that a great war was about to break out. Jian Wushuang took a step forward and the cultivator in charge of guarding the base camp was about to stop him. When he saw who it was, he suddenly asked in surprise, "You are the vice captain, Jian Wushuang. You've returned from the void universe." Jian Wushuang looked at the man and saw that he was wearing the robe of Team 7. He was a member of Team 7 and had once fought side by side with Jian Wushuang during the 5,000 years of war. "It's me." Jian Wushuang nodded and said, "Bring me to Lord Cosmos God." The member of Team 7 saw Jian Wushuang's serious expression and understood that the situation was urgent. He quickly led Jian Wushuang to Cosmos God's hall. Along the way, many people looked at Jian Wushuang. At first, they were surprised, then they were shocked. Jian Wushuang is back. He's back from the void universe. Jian Wushuang ignored the discussions and stepped into the hall. In the great hall of Cosmos God, an aged-looking Cosmos God was draped in a large cloak and was flipping through books. Lan Lan and Lan Su stood on both sides and lit up the lamps for him. Hearing the sound of footsteps, Cosmos God raised his head and saw Jian Wushuang enter. He did not look surprised. Instead, he smiled and nodded. "You're here." Waving his hand, he motioned for Lan Su and Lan Lan to leave. "Yes." Lan Su and Lan Lan replied. When they passed by, they looked at Jian Wushuang with surprise. After the two of them left, only Cosmos God and Jian Wushuang were left in the hall. "Lord Cosmos God." Jian Wushuang cupped his hands at Cosmos God. "There's no need for formalities between us." Cosmos God put down the book in his hand and patted the seat beside him, indicating for Jian Wushuang to sit beside him. "You've worked hard during this period of time." Cosmos God looked at the corners of Jian Wushuang's eyes and sighed softly. For some reason, he felt a little heartache. Jian Wushuang, who was sitting beside Cosmos God, laughed when he heard that. With this one sentence from Cosmos God, everything was worth it. Only the heavens knew that while Jian Wushuang looked calm and peaceful in the God-refining sect, he was in fact very tense every day. He did not dare to relax for fear of being exposed. The amount of effort it took was simply uncountable. Lord Cosmos God, take a look at these two items first. Jian Wushuang gathered his thoughts and flipped his right hand. The map of the void forbidden land, the list of fighting forces, and the bamboo tube that Ban Shan had given him all appeared in his hands. Good. Cosmos God did not waste any words. He understood in his heart that a great battle was about to begin, and that this was not the time to reminisce about the past. He first opened Ban Shan's bamboo tube and looked at it carefully. In the great hall of Cosmos God, the candlelight flickered. Cosmos God looked over slowly and his brows started to furrow. Within the great hall of Cosmos God, it was completely silent. Cosmos God lowered his head and read through the information that Ban Shan had spent tens of thousands of void eras to gather. His brows furrowed even more, and his expression turned ugly. Jian Wushuang sat aside in silence. There was no need for him to say anything. He knew that there was definitely some bad news in the bamboo tube. Otherwise, the expression of Cosmos God would not be so grave. A moment later, Cosmos God finished reading the contents of the bamboo tube. He raised his head to look at the sky and let out a long sigh. Rubbing the space between his brows, Cosmos God continued to flip through the map of the void forbidden land. The moment he opened up the map, the brows of Cosmos God, who had been wearing a rather grim expression, immediately shot up. Eh? What is this? He turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang replied, Lord Cosmos God, this is the map of the void forbidden land opposite the void universe. The void forbidden land is the entrance to our divine power universe. Is that so? Lord Cosmos God nodded upon hearing this. The expression of Cosmos God did not change even after he had finished reading the map. When he saw the calculation of the void universe's combat power at the back, the divine light in his eyes suddenly brightened, and a look of joy appeared on his face. Good, good, good. This combat strength calculation is too timely. Cosmos God turned to look at Jian Wushuang and his eyes flashed with a strange color. He was full of admiration. He naturally understood the importance of this item. With this list of battle strength calculations, he could make arrangements before the great catastrophe came. He could make corresponding plans for every expert above the 6-star level. What was the most terrifying? The unknown was the most terrifying. Now that he had this list of combat powers, it was equivalent to understanding the details of the void universe. I didn't expect that the void universe would still have such a rich foundation after experiencing the first great catastrophe war. There are still so many invincible supremes in the universe. Putting down the map, Cosmos God sighed with emotion. The number of 6-star void masters on this list alone could be counted with 2 hands. He believed that this was only a part of it. There must be many more 6-star void masters who were not recorded in it. Jian Wushuang, I have a request. Cosmos God turned to look at Jian Wushuang. Lord Cosmos God, your words are too serious. If there's anything you need me to do, just let me know. Jian Wushuang's face turned serious and he replied seriously. Very well. Cosmos God nodded before replying, Jian Wushuang, after you return to the void universe, please make a detailed list of all the 6-star level void masters who have not died. These people are very likely to participate in the great catastrophe. No problem. Jian Wushuang nodded and said. It was not a difficult request for him. The topic changed. Jian Wushuang seemed to have thought of something and his expression gradually became serious. He said, Oh right, Lord Cosmos God. I encountered an unexpected situation when I was returning to the divine power cosmos. Oh? What's the situation? Cosmos God raised his eyebrows. For Jian Wushuang to have such a serious expression, it was definitely not a trivial matter. Then Jian Wushuang told Cosmos God about the aura that he had felt in the void forbidden land. After he finished speaking, the divine light in the eyes of Cosmos God suddenly increased by 3 inches. A fierce look appeared on his usually calm face. Jian Wushuang, if I'm not wrong, the aura you felt in the void forbidden land should be Void God. Void God? Jian Wushuang was stunned. That's right. Cosmos God nodded and said, Void God is the ones who triggered the last great catastrophe. He's also the most powerful being in the Void universe. Even I don't dare to say that I'm stronger than him. It's a good thing that our divine power universe was the home of the great catastrophe back then. Void gods would be suppressed by the great Tao laws in our universe, and their strength would be weakened. That's why I was able to defeat him and injure him so badly. Do you still remember the black arm you met in the off-world battlefield? Cosmos God asked. Of course I remember. Jian Wushuang nodded. That was his first battle since he came here. 9 Stars Saint had died in that battle. Naturally, he had a deep impression of it. Jian Wushuang had naturally improved since then, and his realm had reached the intermediate supreme realm. However, he still felt a chill on his back when he saw the black arm that covered the sky. It was a terrifying existence that was on a completely different dimension from him. The owner of this black arm is Void God. From that day on, I knew that this guy was about to wake up. The great catastrophe was coming again. It's a pity. No matter how much I calculated, I still believed that it would take at least several thousand chaos cycles for Void God to truly awaken, break free from his shackles, and return to the world. But according to what you said, I'm afraid that Void God, he's already awake. At this point, a cold glint flashed across the eyes of Cosmos God. So fast. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's breathing quickened. An urgent sense of urgency welled up in Jian Wushuang's heart. Jian Wushuang, it seems like we have to speed up. We have to get our hands on one of the supreme great ancestral weapons, the Fengtian flag, before the great catastrophe begins. Cosmos God said after taking a deep breath. As long as we get the Fengtian flag, we'll have a chance of winning the battle of the great catastrophe. Otherwise, the army of the Void universe can attack and retreat at will. We'll have a hard time dealing with them. As long as you get the Fengtian flag, you can enter the Void universe and insert the Fengtian flag into the Void Forbidden Land, completely cutting off their retreat. At that time, under the suppression and rejection of the great Tao laws, I'm confident that we can lead our divine power universe to defeat them completely. Even if we can't end this great catastrophe on the spot, we can at least damage their vitality and help our divine power universe win. Jian Wushuang immediately understood the importance of the Fengtian flag. Lord Cosmos God, how do we obtain this Fengtian flag? Jian Wushuang asked. Upon hearing this, the eyes of Cosmos God flickered as he spat out these words. Southern Ocean Immortal Island. Find the Fengtian Patriarch. The Fengtian Patriarch? Hearing that, Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and looked at Cosmos God with a strange expression. Jian Wushuang, I know that you are curious why I didn't take the Fengtian flag when I knew where it is. Cosmos God shook his head and let out a bitter laugh. I'm old friends with this Fengtian Patriarch, and we can be considered to be of the same origin. Back when I was still not strong enough, I had a conflict with him and stole his fate of the Tao. I feel guilty toward him. If I go to him and ask him to hand over the Fengtian flag, he will definitely not agree. I might even be met with a rebuff. If it is not a last resort, I do not want to force him and kill him. Therefore, I can only send you to the Southern Ocean Immortal Island first. If that Fengtian Patriarch is stubborn and refuses to take the big picture into consideration, then I will have to use some extreme means. Within Cosmos God Palace, the candlelight flickered. The conversation between Jian Wushuang and Cosmos God lasted for an entire night. Are we going to the Southern Ocean Immortal Island to look for Fengtian Patriarch? Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered as he pondered. This trip would probably take some time. However, with the Tarot Divine Corpse overseeing the God Refining Sect and the assistance of Elder Ban Shan and the others, it should not be too much of a problem. All right. Jian Wushuang nodded and agreed. At the sight of this, a look of gratification flashed in the eyes of Cosmos God. Jian Wushuang, I have to remind you that old man Fengtian has a strange temperament and doesn't like to play his cards according to common sense. If you meet him, just be polite and don't give in to him all the time. Otherwise, he will definitely play tricks on you. Is that so? Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed, indicating that he understood. Finally, Cosmos God stretched out his right hand and patted Jian Wushuang's shoulder. For the first time, He said in a serious tone, Jian Wushuang, the rise and fall of our universe depends on you. Lord Cosmos God, you're too kind. I, Jian Wushuang, will definitely go through fire and water for the sake of the universe. I'll even die 1,000 times. Jian Wushuang replied solemnly. In fact, Jian Wushuang had already mastered the cultivation method of the void universe. Even if the divine power universe was destroyed, he could continue to cultivate in the void universe. Moreover, he was the sect master of the God-refining sect. In terms of reputation and status, he was not any worse than he was in the divine power universe. However, the divine universe was his home. It was the place where he had grown up. His lover, his family, and his master were all deeply rooted in the divine power universe. For this, he was willing to die 10,000 times. The next day, before anyone noticed, Jian Wushuang had already left the base camp and headed toward the Southern Ocean Immortal Island. The South Ocean Immortal Island was located in the South Ocean star field. It was not considered the center of the universe. According to its location, it could be considered a wild land. Within the star field, most of the residences were ordinary mortals. Half a year later, at the edge of the universe, a black-robed figure stepped out of the universe passage. Is that the South Ocean star field? A trace of fatigue flashed in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Even he felt a little tired from the continuous full-speed travel. Just as he was about to release his divine power to find out where South Ocean Immortal Island was in the South Ocean star field, he realized that the entire South Ocean star field seemed to be covered in a layer of mist. His divine power could not penetrate it. It was obvious that this was the work of the Fengtian Patriarch. Jian Wushuang shook his head and did not mind. He tried to use his divine power to locate Fengtian Patriarch. After all, he had come to ask for a favor. It would be rude if he did that. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang took a step forward and landed in the most prosperous city in the South Ocean star field. Tonghulu. I'm selling Tonghulu. Suzhou's Jinlan Squares cakes. Quickly come and take a look. This city was bustling with activity. Many mortals were taking a walk on the streets, and there were peddlers and servants shouting on both sides. It was quite a mortal world scene. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang could not help sighing in his heart. Ever since he became powerful, he had to face countless killings every day. His mind was tense and he had never stopped to look at the scenery along the way. A mortal's life may be short, but it has its own joys. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang stopped an old man and asked with a smile, Old man, do you know where the Southern Ocean Immortal Island is? The Southern Ocean Immortal Island? The old man was stunned and asked, Young man, are you also going to find the old immortal master to listen to his lessons? Old immortal master? Hearing this, Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. The old immortal master the old man was talking about was probably the Fengtian Patriarch. That's right. Jian Wushuang nodded and replied, Old man, do you know where the Southern Ocean Immortal Island is? Once you leave the city, head south and you will see the South Sea. There, you will find a boat that goes out to fish. Spend some silver to rent a boat and head south. If you are fated, you will find the Southern Ocean Immortal Island. If not, you will search the entire South Sea and you will not find the old immortal master. The old man said, Many thanks. Jian Wushuang cupped his hands at the old man and then disappeared. This scene caused a wave of shock in the eyes of the passing mortals. Countless people knelt down and called immortals. However, the old man smiled when he saw Jian Wushuang leave. Little guy, it won't be so easy to find me. Shaking his head, the old man also disappeared. However, the passers-by did not seem to notice it. In just a breath's time, Jian Wushuang arrived at the edge of the South Sea. Countless fishermen were drying the fish with their nets on wooden frames. Jian Wushuang thought for a while and did not go straight to the Southern Ocean Immortal Island. Instead, he picked up 2 stones and turned them into silver. Then, he bought a black awning boat from a fisherman. Splash! The black-caped boat sailed into the sea. Jian Wushuang stood at the bow of the boat with his hands behind his back. The strong wind blew his hair. No matter how turbulent the waves were, he remained unmoved, unspeakably relaxed. The black-caped boat drew a long trace on the blue sea. Jian Wushuang saw many other boats among them, all of which were people who went out to visit immortals. 3 days later, Jian Wushuang frowned. According to common sense, with his speed, he should have already explored the entire Southern Sea. However, he discovered that he seemed to have fallen into a fog formation and was constantly circling around. "Are you playing with me?" Jian Wushuang raised his head and looked into the distance, his eyes showing a touch of impatience. From the moment he arrived in this star field, he had not deliberately concealed his aura. The Fengtian Patriarch should have known of his existence long ago. Jian Wushuang believed that he had been polite to the Fengtian Patriarch after arriving in the star field. No matter what, he should have shown himself. At the thought of this, Jian Wushuang's brows furrowed tighter and the impatience in his eyes became more obvious. At the same time, in the middle of the South Sea, there was a small island surrounded by clouds and mist. The island was filled with immortal chi and immortal cranes. It was like a paradise on earth. On the island, in a bamboo forest, an old man with a silk headdress and a feather fan in his hand was sitting cross-legged on the ground. In front of the old man there was a go board. There was no one on the other side of the board, but every time the old man placed a white piece on the board, a black piece would automatically appear on the board to play against him. "Master, that person has been trapped in the formation for 3 days. Shouldn't we go and take care of him?" A young girl with red lips and white teeth stood beside the old man and asked in a low voice. "Logo in a bamboo forest on the Southern Ocean Immortal Island." The Fengtian Patriarch, who came from the same era as Cosmos gods, was playing chess by himself. Beside him, a little Taoist girl with red lips and white teeth stood quietly, holding a bowl-sized alms bowl in her hand. The alms bowl was filled to the brim with tea. However, what was reflected in the tea was a scene. In the image, a black-haired youth with pale golden eyes stood on a black awning boat with her hands behind her back. She was spinning the alms bowl. "Master, how do you think this person found you? You don't even care about the world and have retired from the universe for so many years. Most people don't even know of your existence." The little Taoist girl asked in a low voice. Clack. Fengtian Patriarch placed a chess piece on the board and snorted coldly. "Who else could it be? It must be that old fool Cosmos God, who informed this person and got him to come and get the Fengtian flag from me." The little Taoist girl could not help but click her tongue when she heard that. In the entire universe, her master was probably the only one who dared to call Cosmos God an old man, right? "Master, why don't we just lend out the Fengtian flag? I observed the sky last night and found that there were 7 stars in a row, forming a dragon-slaying momentum. I'm afraid that a great catastrophe will arise soon and cut off the luck of our universe." After hesitating for a moment, the little Taoist girl said boldly. The hand that was about to land on the chess piece paused. Fengtian Patriarch glared at the little Taoist and said, "Are you the master or am I the master? Since when do I need you to teach me how to do things?" With a cold snort, Fengtian Patriarch said, "If not for that old fogey snatching away my opportunity back then, how could the position of Cosmos God be suitable for him? I should be the one sitting there. Did he consider my feelings when he snatched my fortune? Now that the universe is in trouble, you want to come to me? What does he think I am? His tool?" Hearing this, the little Taoist could not help but stick out her tongue and say no more. She knew that her master had always been brooding over that incident. After all, that was the only opportunity to break through the current realm. It was not an exaggeration to say that there was a great hatred between them for such an opportunity to be snatched away. "Then, master, should I go tell this person to leave?" The little Taoist girl asked tentatively. "Why should I tell him? This person has been trapped in the formation for a few days, so he'll naturally retreat and leave on his own." Fengtian Patriarch continued to point as he shook his head. However, at this moment, suddenly, as if he had sensed something, Fengtian Patriarch's expression changed drastically. "What is this guy trying to do?" The next moment, the figure of the Fengtian Patriarch disappeared in an instant. Meanwhile, in the South Sea, Jian Wushuang stood on the bow of the black awning boat and looked at Fengtian Patriarch, who had not appeared for a long time. The impatience between his brows finally exploded. Fengtian Patriarch, it's fine if you don't want to come out, but I'll destroy the South Sea and all the living beings on this planet. In any case, by the time the other verse attacks, everyone will be dead. It's better to die early and reincarnate early. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold. He stomped his right foot heavily and flew up to the sky, standing above the South Sea. As Jian Wushuang clenched his right hand, billions of tons of water in the South Sea boiled up and formed a water tornado that was tens of thousands of feet high. At this moment, all the mortals living in the South Ocean could see this devastating water tornado. Their faces were filled with shock, and they knelt on the ground, begging for mercy. Stop! At this moment, a figure that looked like a rotating meteorite broke through the air and arrived quickly, leaving a long trail of flames in the air. In an instant, a terrifying pressure spread out in all directions. The tens of thousands of seawater that formed the tornado collapsed and returned to the sea. Brat, are you looking for death? An old man in a shabby Taoist robe, with his hair tied up with a thin wooden stick, was staring at Jian Wushuang. Fengtian Patriarch? Jian Wushuang turned to look at Fengtian Patriarch. The pressure from Fengtian Patriarch was like thousands of mountains. In an instant, Jian Wushuang almost knelt down. Jian Wushuang's knees did not bend at all in the face of such deep and hellish pressure. Fengtian Patriarch, the entire universe is in danger now. Life and death can be decided with a single thought. All the supremes in the universe are willing to die with no regrets for the safety of the universe, but you're hiding here and only care about your own enjoyment. You don't care about the life and death of the entire universe. You're really rotten. Jian Wushuang felt slightly relieved when he saw that Fengtian Patriarch did not attack him immediately. He looked at Fengtian Patriarch coldly and said, "This was an attempt to guilt-trip Fengtian Patriarch from the moral high ground, but he had to say it. Once the divine power universe fell, all the living beings in the universe might be destroyed and slaughtered. This matter was already closely related to everyone in the universe. Furthermore, if he was unable to awaken the Fengtian Patriarch this time around, what awaited the Fengtian Patriarch would be the thunderous methods of Cosmos God. No matter how strong the Fengtian Patriarch was, he would still be defeated when facing a Cosmos God. In other words, he was not here to borrow the Fengtian banner, but to save the Fengtian Patriarch. Humph, what does the life and death of the universe have to do with this old man? I've already set up tens of millions of formations here. Even if the people from the void universe come in, what can they do to me?" The Fengtian Grandmaster snorted coldly and said in disdain. "Naive!" Jian Wushuang interrupted Fengtian Patriarch and said with a hint of mockery, "Fengtian Patriarch, do you really think that you can resist the million-strong army of the void universe with just these formations?" When Fengtian Patriarch heard this, he was about to retort. "Fine," Jian Wushuang continued. "Even if you can find a place to stay among the million-strong army in the void universe, are you willing to hide here and there all day like a stray dog?" Originally, Jian Wushuang had wanted to persuade Fengtian Patriarch nicely before he met him again. However, when he saw him, these thoughts disappeared. He was going to use the most direct of words to turn into a slap and completely wake the Fengtian Patriarch up. After taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang continued, "Fengtian Patriarch, I'm sure you know why I'm here. I'm here to borrow the Fengtian flag from you. But it seems like you won't lend it to me. But I have something to tell you. Protecting the universe and fighting for the universe is never an individual's matter. It is the matter of everyone in the universe. Everyone knows that when the nest is overturned, no egg can remain intact. When the country is broken, every family will cease to exist. Fengtian Patriarch, you are my senior. You should understand this." Jian Wushuang's voice was as loud as thunder. When the nest was overturned, no eggs will be left intact. The country was broken. No family will survive. This old man should understand these principles. After Jian Wushuang finished his words, his voice was like thunder, deafening and stirring up the sea water again. At this moment, a little Taoist girl was already flying over from the distance. "Junior, how dare you insult me? As soon as he finished speaking, Patriarch Fengtian trembled with anger. He pointed a trembling finger at Jian Wushuang, the veins on his forehead throbbing. He, the Fengtian great ancestor, was born at the beginning of the universe, before the chaos opened. When had anyone dared to criticize him? I think you're looking for death. Endless primordial qi gushed out of Fengtian Patriarch's body, surging to the extreme. Master! At this moment, the little Taoist girl who was riding a beam of light grabbed Patriarch Fengtian's arm and quickly advised, Master, calm down, calm down. You're already so old. Why are you bickering with the younger generation? It's not worth it to be angry and harm your body. As he spoke, the little Taoist child winked at Jian Wushuang, urging him to quickly run away. Chu Ji, you also want to make your master angry? Quickly release your master. Patriarch Fengtian glared at the little Taoist. On the other side, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and said in a neither humble nor overbearing manner, Senior Fengtian, I have no intention of humiliating you. I'm just telling you the truth. After a pause, Jian Wushuang continued, Senior Fengtian, I'll only say what I'm about to say once. After I'm done, it's up to you whether you want to borrow the Fengtian flag or not. I won't force you. Hearing this, the anger in Fengtian great ancestor's heart subsided a little, but his face was still dark. Humph, Junior. I'd like to see what you're going to say. Very well. Jian Wushuang nodded and said without hesitation, Senior Fengtian, I know that Lord Cosmos God once snatched away your opportunities and caused you to lose the opportunity to reach that step. Hence, you have always harbored a grudge in your heart and were disheartened. You settled down in a corner and no longer cared about the fate of the universe. Bang! Jian Wushuang took a step forward and changed the topic. His tone became a little more serious. However, do you know that Lord Cosmos God has used his body as a shield and sat alone in the off-world battlefield for hundreds of millions of years, not allowing the other races of the void universe to take a single step forward? Do you know that, during the Great Catastrophe, countless universe supreme beings would rather die in the rain than live under someone else's roof to protect the universe? I once fought in the off-world battlefield for 5,000 years. I've seen countless geniuses who were proud throw themselves at the wind just to stop the void universe by half an inch. I once knew that Sword Supreme Tarot was unrivaled in the world and suppressed the 9 heavens and 10 lands with one sword. However, in order to resist the alien races from the void universe, he buried the universe and turned everyone in his country into nothingness. I once heard that Jiedong, who was unparalleled in this universe in all of history. However, they also died at the hands of outsiders, and didn't retreat even half a step before they died. I've also seen the thousands of nameless people in my universe. They were geniuses, experts, they were holy land masters, they were the favored children of heaven. They were the pride of the world, but they silently died for the universe without a single word of complaint. The reason why they were so willing to die was because they knew that this universe was their home. They knew that their families were behind them, disciple, wife and children. Therefore, there is only one choice in this battle, and that is to fight to the death. At this point, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and his tone became gentler. He looked straight at Patriarch Fengtian and said, But none of them are obligated to die for the sake of the universe. They could have been like you, living in a secluded corner of the universe and not caring about the affairs of the world. When the Otherverse armies arrive, they could have simply found a place to hide. After Jian Wushuang finished his words, he did not sing loudly or pretend to be sad. He just gave a plain description. However, it was this calm description that revealed his shock. It was as if a heavy hammer had smashed into Patriarch Fengtian's heart. Patriarch Fengtian fell silent. He looked at Jian Wushuang in a daze and did not speak. He was not a person with a bad nature. Otherwise, when Jian Wushuang had threatened him with the lives of hundreds of millions of living beings at the beginning, he would have killed Jian Wushuang on the spot in a fit of rage. However, he had a knot in his heart. This was due to the appearance of Cosmos God, but he had firmly locked himself in place. Jian Wushuang's words still did not untie his knot, but it tied an even bigger knot in another place. Master, I think, why don't you lend him the Feng Tian flag? If the universe falls, we'll be the ones to suffer in the end. The little Taoist girl whispered with tears in his eyes. Shut up. Patriarch Feng Tian glared at the little Taoist child and then looked at Jian Wushuang. Although he was also shaken, he pretended to be uncaring and mumbled, "They are willing to die because they are stupid? What does it have to do with this old man? Don't try to use righteousness to suppress me." After saying that, he glanced at Jian Wushuang and saw that Jian Wushuang was really about to turn around and leave. He quickly shouted in exasperation, "Brat, stop!" Oh! Jian Wushuang, who had originally given up hope on Patriarch Feng Tian and intended to let Cosmos God take action, paused in his steps and turned to look at Patriarch Feng Tian. He frowned and said, "Senior Feng Tian, is there anything else you need?" Feng Tian Patriarch glared at Jian Wushuang, raised his head, and snorted. "Little fellow, don't be in such a hurry to leave. This old master didn't say that I wouldn't lend it to you, right? How about this, you play a game of chess with me. If you win, I'll lend you the Feng Tian flag. How about it?" Before Jian Wushuang could say anything, the little Taoist girl beside Feng Tian Patriarch was overjoyed. She knew all too well what her master's level of play was. That would be a terrible chess player, an existence that was purely a gift. He quickly gave Jian Wushuang a look to signal him to agree. Jian Wushuang frowned. Although he did not know what the Patriarch Feng Tian was up to this time, he nodded and agreed when he saw the little Taoist beside him jumping up and down in joy. "All right," he said. "Brat. Follow me to the Southern Ocean Immortal Island and we'll see who's better." Patriarch Feng Tian snorted and grabbed Jian Wushuang with his big hand. An invisible big hand grabbed Jian Wushuang, took a step, turned into a flowing light, and disappeared from the South Sea. When Jian Wushuang's vision blurred and he came back to his senses, he was already on an island surrounded by a dense fairy aura and a bamboo forest. His field of vision changed rapidly. By the time Jian Wushuang could see the situation in front of him, he was already on an island enshrouding in celestial light and white mist. Rows of red-crowned, white-feathered cranes with sharp beaks were stepping on the beach leisurely like elegant fairies. Startled by the fish in the sea, they immediately spread their wings and flew up, drawing white lines in the air, displaying their beauty to their heart's content. With a breath, even his divine power became much more abundant. Jian Wushuang landed in front of a bamboo house. Outside the bamboo house, the sun was shining and the sea breeze was warm. On both sides of the chessboard, there were 2 jade plates filled with black and white chess pieces. Feng Tian Patriarch, who was sitting beside the black chess pieces, saw Jian Wushuang's look of admiration as he looked at the island. He could not help but look slightly proud. "Junior, let this old man ask you, how is this old man's island? Let me tell you, even if a mortal stays on this island for 100 years, they can become an immortal and live forever. If a supreme comes, their cultivation speed will be 10 times faster. It's even more powerful than the grotto heavens and blessed lands of the so-called top powers in the universe." As he spoke, Feng Tian Patriarch stroked his beard and smiled. However, Jian Wushuang's first sentence made his smile freeze. "I'm just sighing. The universe is about to be destroyed, but Senior still has the mood to relax here. You're really big-hearted." Upon hearing this, a look of shame and anger quickly appeared on Feng Tian Patriarch's face. He blew at his beard and glared. "Brat, other than using the righteousness of the universe to pressure this old man, what else do you know?" Hearing this, Jian Wushuang could not help but be speechless. The little Taoist girl beside him also covered his mouth and chuckled. "Humph. Don't be long-winded. Come and play chess with this old man." Feng Tian Patriarch beckoned at Jian Wushuang impatiently. "All right." Jian Wushuang nodded and sat down cross-legged in front of him. "Respect the old and cherish the young. This old man will go first." Feng Tian Patriarch took the lead and placed his black finger on the chessboard. As his finger fell, it landed in the center of the chessboard, which was the position of Tianyuan. After that, Feng Tian Patriarch looked up at Jian Wushuang with a triumphant smile and said, "This move of mine directly determines the overall situation. In the center of the chessboard, There is a sharp sword that is directly pressed against your throat. Junior, let's see how you're going to fight me. Hearing this, the little Taoist girl could not help but laugh again. Master was going to bring out his bullshit theory again. The falling finger of Tianyuan might seem cool, but it was actually the most noob way of starting. Those who knew a little about chess could tell that her master was a noob. Thinking of this, the little Taoist looked at Jian Wushuang with hope. To be honest, she hoped that Jian Wushuang would win. He was different from Fengtian Patriarch. Fengtian Patriarch had sealed himself in this small southern ocean immortal island. Firstly, it was indeed because he had grudges with Cosmos God. Secondly, it was also because he was angry with him. However, the little Taoist girl did not have such a mentality. Just as she thought that Jian Wushuang would easily defeat Fengtian Patriarch, the little Taoist child was stunned. Jian Wushuang was looking at the chess game with a serious expression. He frowned and looked like he was in deep thought. The next moment. Then, Jian Wushuang said seriously, "Senior's chess skills are superb and have reached the acme of perfection. I'm afraid that you've reached the peak of chess. However, I have my own way of dealing with it." Pa! Jian Wushuang raised his white finger and placed it on the bottom left corner of the chessboard. Senior's attack on Tianyuan is indeed fierce, but if I guard the four corners and slowly plan to surround them layer by layer, I'm sure I'll be able to catch the turtle in the jar. The little Taoist girl was stunned. This was what? What a good catch a turtle in a jar. Watch how this old man will kill you in all directions and burn your boats. The eyes of Fengtian Patriarch flashed with killing intent. He pointed his finger again at the lower right corner of one of the four corners. Junior, you have a good plan and I have a ladder over the wall. Now that I've secured an escape route, I'd like to see how you can fight with this old man. Fengtian Patriarch stroked his beard and smiled. He was unfathomably profound and unpredictable. Humph. Watch me attack again. Jian Wushuang pointed at one of the four corners again. The little Taoist girl stood at the side and looked at Jian Wushuang and Fengtian Patriarch, who were attacking each other with murderous intent. She finally confirmed one thing. These two were fucking noobs. If the little Taoist girl was not really proficient in Go chess, she would have been deceived by these two people's confident and reasonable words. It's fine if they're just noobs, but they're actually saying it as if it makes sense. I almost believed them. The little Taoist girl muttered to herself, feeling a little hopeless. As expected, a moment later, "Ha ha ha ha, Junior, you've lost." Fengtian Patriarch slapped the chessboard, causing the chess pieces to tremble violently. Satisfying. Junior, you're the first person I've won in thousands of years since I've become obsessed with Go chess. Ha 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 ha. Fengtian Patriarch laughed maniacally. Jian Wushuang's face turned pale. He did not expect that his plan would fail and the Fengtian Patriarch would block the last hole. The little Taoist girl held her forehead and smiled bitterly. What did she just see? It was a superior chess game that relied on deduction and calculation. However, in the hands of Jian Wushuang and Fengtian Patriarch, it became a brutal game of blocking holes and seeing who would fill up the gaps first. It was really a little painful to the eyes. Jian Wushuang stood up and sighed. A loss was a loss. He was not someone who could not afford to lose. Since that was the case, he could only retreat first and let Cosmos God think of a way to retrieve the Fengtian flag personally. However, this Fengtian Patriarch was not a bad person by nature. No matter what, he still had to persuade Cosmos God to think of a way to keep this Fengtian Patriarch alive. At the thought of this, Jian Wushuang cupped his hands at Fengtian Patriarch and said, "Senior, Junior will take his leave." After saying that, Jian Wushuang rode on his sword light and prepared to leave. Fengtian Patriarch, who had been immersed in the joy of victory, was stunned. He had asked Jian Wushuang to play Go chess with him because he knew that his chess skills were terrible and he had never won before. He wanted to borrow the Fengtian flag to Jian Wushuang. In this way, he could save his face and have a way out. Secondly, Jian Wushuang could borrow the Fengtian flag. However, if Jian Wushuang wanted to leave, wouldn't that mean that his plan had been in vain? I really don't know if I should say that you're a disappointing junior, or that my chess skills have advanced by leaps and bounds recently. Sigh, it's hard to find a close friend, and I'm as lonely as snow. Fengtian Patriarch sighed in his heart. Then, he looked up at Jian Wushuang's back and shouted, "Hold on! Hold on!" A loud shout exploded across the entire Southern Ocean Immortal Island. Fengtian Patriarch's eyes widened in anger. He waved his hand and countless spells gushed out, forming a huge light shield. Like invisible glass, it blocked Jian Wushuang from leaving. "Senior Fengtian, what else are you thinking about?" Jian Wushuang stopped in his tracks and turned around to look at Fengtian Patriarch helplessly. He had lost the game of chess, and Fengtian Patriarch should be proud of himself. Why did he suddenly stop him? Could it be that he wanted to humiliate him? "Junior, do you think you can come and go as you please in this old man's Southern Ocean Immortal Island?" Fengtian Patriarch glanced at Jian Wushuang and snorted. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's pupils could not help but shrink. Could it be that the Fengtian Patriarch had changed his attitude? Just as Jian Wushuang held the Tarot Divine Sword and was prepared to break the formation and escape, Fengtian Patriarch waved his sleeve and said coldly, "Junior, you're not going to borrow the Fengtian flag today and you want to leave?" Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was stunned for a moment, and then he was overjoyed. "Many thanks, Senior Fengtian. The entire universe will be grateful to you for borrowing the Fengtian flag today." After saying that, Jian Wushuang took a step forward and landed in front of Fengtian Patriarch. At the same time, Jian Wushuang sighed in his heart. It was no wonder that the Cosmos God had said that the Fengtian Patriarch had a strange personality. It seemed like he was right. This change in attitude was faster than flipping a book. "I can't figure this guy out," Jian Wushuang muttered to himself, shaking his head. "Don't thank me yet. I can lend you the Fengtian flag, but I have a condition." Fengtian Patriarch glanced at Jian Wushuang again and said. To this, Jian Wushuang nodded and did not refute. The Fengtian flag was one of the 7 supreme great ancestral weapons. This power was unparalleled in the world, so Jian Wushuang did not expect to get it for free. A supreme great ancestral weapon represented the most extreme power in the world. The Tarot Divine Sword represented the most extreme killing power. The Chaos Wushu Cauldron represented the ultimate power of creation. The Fengtian flag represented the ultimate power of sealing and suppression. "Senior, please feel free to speak." Jian Wushuang cupped his hands and said, "All right." Fengtian Patriarch took a deep breath and his expression became serious for the first time. He pointed at the Tarot Divine Sword hanging on Jian Wushuang's waist and said, "Junior, the Fengtian flag is a supreme ancestral weapon. If you want to borrow the Fengtian flag from me, you must also exchange it for one of the supreme ancestral weapons of the same level. If I'm not mistaken, the sword on your waist is the sword that represents killing among the supreme ancestral weapons, right?" After he finished speaking, he stared at Jian Wushuang with burning eyes. This was a deal but also a test. He wanted to see if Jian Wushuang was really willing to sacrifice everything for the universe as he had said on the surface of the South Sea. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang fell silent. It could be said that the reason why he could fight across realms, besides his extremely powerful divine abilities and sword arts talent, was partly because of the terrifying power that the Tarot Divine Sword had given him. If he handed over the Tarot Divine Sword, Jian Wushuang's fighting power would be greatly reduced. If it was any other time, it would have been fine, but now that the great catastrophe was about to begin, if he wanted to go into battle to kill the enemy, the Tarot Divine Sword would definitely be indispensable. After a moment of silence, "Senior Fengtian, I'm sorry, but I can't." Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and spoke in a deep voice. Hearing this, the Fengtian Patriarch was stunned for a moment. Then he sneered in his heart. Hee, what dogshit righteousness of the universe, what willingness to die for the universe. It was just nice words. It did not hurt to stand and talk. Once it involved his own interests, he would reveal his true colors. At the thought of this, Fengtian Patriarch's eyes turned cold. Just as he was about to ask Jian Wushuang to leave, Jian Wushuang continued, "Senior Fengtian, the Tarot Divine Sword is my weapon. If a swordsman doesn't have a sword in their hands, how will they be able to unleash their potential? Senior, if you want the Tarot Divine Sword, I can give it to you after the war is over. As for what you said about the supreme ancestral weapon in exchange, Fwip! Jian Wushuang flipped his right hand, and a small bronze cauldron covered with ancient patterns fell into his hand. Senior, what do you think of this junior's item? Chaos Wushu Cauldron. In an instant, the Fengtian Patriarch's face fell. The Chaos Wushu Cauldron could be said to be the most precious of the 7 supreme great ancestral weapons. That was because the Chaos Wushu Cauldron represented creation. Killing and destroying were easy, but creating was the hardest of all. If one wanted to take the step to become as strong as Cosmos God, the most crucial factor was to comprehend creation. Why do you have the Chaos Wushu Cauldron? The light in Fengtian Patriarch's eyes brightened as he spoke with a trembling voice. Senior, you don't need to know where I got this cauldron from. You just need to tell me if I can exchange it for the Fengtian flag, Jian Wushuang said indifferently. Upon hearing this, Fengtian Patriarch looked at Jian Wushuang deeply and said, "This Chaos Wushu Cauldron seems to be damaged, right? But even so, it's enough to exchange for the Fengtian flag." At this point, Fengtian Patriarch paused and said in a deep voice, "Kid, I won't take advantage of you. To tell you the truth, this Chaos Wushu Cauldron is the key to breaking through the last step for my ascension. However, with your current realm, you don't need it for the time being. It's a waste to hold it in your hands. Therefore, I will promise you that after this catastrophe is over, I will return the Chaos Wushu Cauldron to you. I will even give you the Fengtian banner. How about it?" With that, he flipped his right hand and a stack of small black flags appeared. He pushed the Fengtian flag to Jian Wushuang first. "All right," he said. Jian Wushuang nodded. Just as the Fengtian Patriarch had said, although the Chaos Wushu Cauldron was good, it was not of much use to him at the moment. On the other hand, the Fengtian flag was what he needed the most right now. Jian Wushuang took the Fengtian flag and gave the Chaos Wushu Cauldron to Fengtian Patriarch. "Senior Fengtian, now that the great catastrophe is about to begin, Junior still has many things to do. I won't stay any longer. Farewell." Jian Wushuang cupped his hands at Fengtian Patriarch. "All right." Fengtian Patriarch nodded. He knew that there were many things to do at the moment, so he could not keep Jian Wushuang any longer. "Senior Fengtian, we'll meet again another day." Jian Wushuang smiled at Fengtian Patriarch and the little Taoist girl. Then he took a step forward and turned into a sharp sword light. Like smoke and tide, he soared into the sky and disappeared from the Southern Ocean Immortal Island, leaving only a long white mark. Whoosh! A long white mark flew across the sky. Jian Wushuang's figure gradually turned into a small black dot and disappeared into the horizon. The sea that had calmed down washed the beach in waves, bringing up countless things like shells, gravel, and starfish, reflecting the blue sky. Fengtian Patriarch held the Chaos Wushu Cauldron and stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the sky calmly and did not come back to his senses for a long time. Behind him, the little Taoist had her head lowered, not saying anything. "Chu Ji, do you think I've made a mistake all these years?" Fengtian Patriarch suddenly said. There was no emotion in his voice, but it gave off a vague feeling of confusion. The little Taoist girl was stunned. She knew that her master had always been a very kind person. If it was an ordinary person who had their opportunity to advance snatched away by others, they would have long been irreconcilable with that person. However, her own master did not do so. He had also never harbored any thoughts of taking revenge on Cosmos gods in the past. "Master, why do you think so?" the Taoist girl asked in a daze. Hearing this, Fengtian Patriarch smiled bitterly and said, "In fact, in the last battle of the Great Catastrophe War, if I had to die, our divine power universe wouldn't have lost so many people." The little Taoist girl was still a little dazed. However, he knew that with his master's power, if he really attacked, not only would so many people in the divine universe not die, but it was even possible to reverse the situation. One must know that his own master was someone who came from the same era as the Cosmos gods. Back then, he had even suppressed the Cosmos gods. Even now, After the cosmos gods had reached that unspeakable realm, his master's strength was only one level lower than that of the cosmos gods. Forget it, you're still too young. You won't understand even if I tell you. Feng Tian Patriarch shook his head, pursed his lips, and did not say anything else. Only he himself knew that he had trapped himself on South Sea Island for so many years because he had given up on himself and was unwilling to face reality. Suddenly, the Feng Tian Patriarch let out a long breath and turned to look at the little Taoist, who was only as tall as his shoulders. He smiled and said, "Chi-Chi, how many years have you been with your master?" The little Taoist boy was stunned. Although he didn't understand why his master would suddenly ask this, he felt that his master was a little strange today. "1,000,000 years. You've been with me on this island for 1,000,000 years. The Feng Tian Patriarch sighed and suddenly said something that made the little Tao child's expression freeze. "Chu Ji, do you want to go out and take a look? What I mean is to see the real vast galaxy, the boundless sea of stars, to see the true appearance of this world." The Taoist girl's eyes widened, and her breathing became a little hurried. Ever since she had been picked up by Feng Tian Patriarch on the beach, she had never left this world. In the beginning, she would go to the mortal countries to play, make friends, and have fun. However, it did not take long for him to realize that mortals had life, old age, sickness, and death, and they had their own day and night. When she came out of her seclusion and happily went to find her former friends, they had long been dead and buried in graves, and the grass on their graves were 3 feet tall. A mortal's life was perhaps just a period of time for him to meditate. As time passed, he no longer went to the mortal countries to have fun. Otherwise, once there was a life and death separation, it would only add to her sadness. It could be said that she had spent almost all of the past 1,000,000 years on the Southern Ocean Immortal Island with her master Feng Tian Patriarch. She could not wait to see the wonderful universe that his master had talked about. She wanted to see the brilliant sea of stars. However, she did not want to bring it up and put her master in a difficult position. She knew that her master, who looked carefree on the surface and seemed to not take anything to heart, had a knot in the depths of his heart. "I want to." After hesitating for a long time, the little Taoist girl took a deep breath and said the words firmly. After he finished speaking, she thought that her master would glare at her fiercely and then reprimand her. Therefore, she lowered her head and did not dare to look at her master's face. However, what she got in return was a carefree laugh that her master had never had before. "Good, my disciple. I'll take you to see what the universe really looks like." Feng Tian Patriarch laughed heartily, carefreely, and uninhibited. He had never laughed so freely before. The light in his eyes brightened, and an extremely terrifying, overbearing intent emanated from his body. On this day, the Feng Tian Patriarch finally found the courage to undo the knot in the depths of his heart. He was the #1 expert below Cosmos God. "Chu Ji, since you're going to the outside world, you can't wear this set of clothes. The girls in the outside world don't dress like you do." With a wave of his right hand, a purple silk dress with tassels appeared in his hand. "Go and change into this." "Ah!" The little Taoist girl was stunned for a moment. She took the dress from Feng Tian Patriarch in a daze and ran into the bamboo house on the Southern Ocean Immortal Island. A moment later, a tall, slender, and curvaceous young lady in a long dress nervously clutched her dress as she timidly shuffled out of the bamboo house. She had bright eyes and white teeth. Her skin was as white as snow, and her clear eyes were like clear water, extremely clear. The afterglow of the setting sun reflected on her face, reflecting a large patch of shyness. Her facial features were exquisite. Her small face had a high nose, and her chin was sharp. There were many beauties in the universe, some cold, some enchanting, and some cold, but she had something that most women did not have. She was clean. The word clean seemed simple, but it was the rarest word. "Master, I'm a little uncomfortable, so I'll change back to that Taoist robe." Chu Ji pinched the hem of her clothes, lowered her head, and said in a weak voice. She did not know why, but she felt that her heart was thumping and her palms were sweating. "Silly disciple, you're not allowed to switch back." Fengtian Patriarch glared at the youngling as he spoke in a threatening tone. He sighed in his heart. He was the only one who knew what he was going to do after leaving the Southern Ocean Immortal Island. After taking her to see the universe, he would also go and do something for this universe. Whether or not he would be able to return alive was unknown to the Fengtian Patriarch. Chu Ji did not know that this dress was an extremely powerful defensive immortal garment that Fengtian Patriarch had refined with all his supreme treasures. In terms of value, it was probably not much lower than a supreme ancestral weapon. This was a gift that the Fengtian Patriarch had made for her with his life savings. My disciple, if Master is not here in the future, I will rely on this immortal robe to protect you, Fengtian Patriarch said silently in his heart. However, he raised his head and stretched out his hand, flicking Chu Ji's forehead. His tone was a little fierce as he said, "Silly disciple, if Master finds out that you dare to change out of these clothes, Master will peel off your skin." All right, I know. Master, why are you so fierce? Chu Ji rubbed her head where she had been flicked and mumbled in dissatisfaction. Fengtian Patriarch snorted and did not say anything else. Instead, he lowered his head and looked at the ground beneath his feet. His eyes were filled with reminiscence. Old friend, you've accompanied this old man here for so many years. You must have been bored for a long time, right? Bang! Fengtian Patriarch chuckled to himself as he stomped his right foot lightly. Rumble! In an instant, the entire Southern Ocean Immortal Island began to tremble violently. The seawater within a radius of 10,000 miles began to explode like boiling water. Boom, boom, boom. The ground cracked open and the sea boiled. It was as if a giant beast was awakening under the feet of the Fengtian Patriarch. The next moment, bang! An earth-shattering boom erupted. The entire Southern Ocean Immortal Island was lifted into the air, and an extremely dull buzzing sound was heard. From afar, a black turtle emerged from the deep sea. Master, this is? Chu Ji's eyes flashed with a look of horror. She saw that under her feet was no longer the Southern Ocean Immortal Island, but a giant black turtle that was hundreds of thousands of feet wide. Its 4 limbs were like 4 ocean-stabilizing divine needles, pillars that held up the sky, and the Southern Ocean Immortal Island that she had lived on for 1,000,000 years was just a shell on the back of this giant turtle. The seething sea breeze ruffled the white hair on the sides of Fengtian Patriarch's face. However, the smile on his face grew wider. Old fool, I've come out of seclusion. It's time to settle the score with you. Oh, right, the alien races in the Void Universe, we have to deal with them first. I'll put aside the score with this old man for now and blast these bastards out of our universe first. On this day, in the endless territories of the South Ocean star field, countless mortals raised their heads and saw a giant turtle that covered the sky. Hundreds of millions of living beings knelt on the ground and looked at the giant turtle in the sky with fanatical eyes. They shouted in unison to bid farewell to the immortal. On this day, there was no more legend about the old immortal master in the South Ocean star field. On this day, there was a strange combination in the universe. It was a giant turtle that was as big as a star. A disheveled old man and a beautiful purple-dressed girl were traveling around the universe. It was a strange combination. Oh, this old man forgot to ask. What's the name of the boy who played chess with this old man? I wonder if this boy has a Tao companion. It's time to find someone to entrust this young girl to. Shaking his head, this strange pair disappeared into the vast starry sky. And in the distant starry sky, Jian Wushuang, who was wearing a black robe and had a cold face, was already flying toward the off-world battlefield. In the vast universe, Jian Wushuang stepped on an escape light and quickly rushed toward the off-world battlefield. Soon, Jian Wushuang arrived at the base camp with his full strength. Jian Wushuang had only left the base camp for a few months, but the entire base camp was filled with a bleak aura and everyone had a heavy look on their faces. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang could not help frowning. Could it be that something had happened during the few months that he had been away? Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang strode into Cosmos God's Hall. The current Jian Wushuang was the only person who could freely enter and exit Cosmos God's hall apart from the two great disciples of Cosmos God. Jian Wushuang, you're back. Cosmos God nodded at Jian Wushuang. He still looked the same as when Jian Wushuang first met him, gentle and kind, with a smile on his face. However, Jian Wushuang could see deep fatigue on his face. Jian Wushuang, what's the situation? Did the Fengtian Patriarch lend you the Fengtian flag? Cosmos God asked after gathering his spirit. I didn't fail you. Jian Wushuang nodded. He flipped his right hand and a little black flag appeared in his hand. All right. Upon seeing this, the eyes of Cosmos God lit up and he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. With the Fengtian flag, he had some confidence in the battle of the catastrophe. After a moment of silence, Cosmos God said, Jian Wushuang, I have bad news for you. Without beating around the bush, Cosmos God continued. In the past 2 months, many Void warriors from the Void universe have come out of the cracks in the Void. In the short span of a month, nearly 10 battles have broken out. The friction between us and the cracks in the Void is getting bigger and bigger. I guess that the battle of great catastrophe may break out at any time. What? So fast? Jian Wushuang was shocked. Even though he had already made preparations to deal with the battle of great catastrophe, when the battle really came, he still felt a little dazed. Therefore, Jian Wushuang, please hurry back to the Void universe and wait for my orders. Once the great catastrophe war begins and the core power of the Void universe attacks our universe, I'll send you an order. At that time, you can use the Fengtian flag to set up a sealing formation in their Void Forbidden Land and cut off their escape. Cosmos God said with a solemn expression. Yes. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang nodded his head and his face also became serious. The magnetic fields and nomological laws of the two universes were not connected, which meant that after the people of the Void universe attacked the Divine Power universe, they would consume Void power and would not be replenished. In the past, the reason why the Void warriors of the Void universe were so difficult to deal with during the Great Catastrophe War was that they would return to the Void universe to replenish their energy once they were no match for the enemy or were exhausted. Then they would attack again. Once Jian Wushuang set up the Fengtian flag in the Void crack of the Forbidden Void Land and blocked the 87th Void crack, he would be able to cut off their escape route and divide the Void warriors of the Void universe. At that time, under the leadership of Cosmos Gods, they would be able to obliterate them even if they had to spend a lot of time and effort. The Void universe was a level higher than the Divine Power universe, both individually and as a whole. In this case, the Divine Power universe needed to reverse the outcome and turn the defeat into victory, which was the best countermeasure. And Jian Wushuang played the most important role. After taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang walked out of the hall with large strides. When they arrived at the entrance of Cosmos God's hall, Jian Wushuang seemed to have thought of something. He tore off a corner of his clothes with his right hand and wrote a few lines of words with his hand as a pen. Lord Cosmos God, if I do not return alive this time, please help me pass this piece of cloth to my wife, Lang Rushuang. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and flicked his finger. The piece of cloth immediately fell into the hands of Cosmos God. Upon hearing this, Cosmos God could not help but be stunned. He wanted to say something to comfort him, but in the end, he only sighed and nodded. If Jian Wushuang wanted to cut off the Void universe's escape route, he had to go deep into the Void Forbidden Land. The hope of survival was very small. Jian Wushuang and Cosmos Gods understood this point. After leaving the base camp, Jian Wushuang set off again to the crack in the Void. This time, Supreme Gongyang did not go back to the Void universe. Instead, he stayed in the Divine Power universe and waited for the war to break out to help. Jian Wushuang would be alone in the Void universe and start a different kind of battle. He arrived at the off-world battlefield. Right now, the ones in charge of guarding the battlefield were Teams 6 and 7. The two team leaders seemed to have received the news from Cosmos Gods a long time ago. They did not ask much about Jian Wushuang's intention to go to the Void universe and only told Jian Wushuang to be careful. At that moment, there was a war going on in the off-world battlefield. Therefore, Jian Wushuang was not in a hurry to step into the crack in the Void. Instead, he waited for the battle to end. Human-faced spiders the size of small mountains crawled out of the cracks in the void. They were so dense that they filled the entire sky. Fortunately, although these human-faced spiders were large in number, they were not individually strong. The strongest among them was only at the ultimate ruler realm. As a result, the members of Team 6 and Team 7 had an easy time. According to what Supreme Black Source had said, these human-faced spiders were not intelligent entities. They had most likely been created by some major power in the Void Universe in order to observe and test the power of the Divine Power Universe. A moment later, the one-sided slaughter came to an end. Human-faced spiders the size of small mountains fell from the sky like rain. The universe was filled with the broken limbs, flesh, and blood of the human-faced spiders. The battle was over and it was time for Jian Wushuang to leave. Supreme Black Source looked at Jian Wushuang with a complicated expression. The junior who had just entered the Supreme Realm was now shouldering the heavy responsibility of the life and death of the universe. Jian Wushuang, I will wait for your safe return, Supreme Black Source said in a low voice. Jian Wushuang nodded with a smile and replied with 2 words. For sure. Then, Jian Wushuang stepped into the void crack without hesitation. Jian Wushuang's black-robed figure was gradually swallowed by the black hole-like crack. No one had discovered it. A strange red light flashed in the eyes of a human-faced spider corpse that had been dead for a long time, leaving only its head. The image of Jian Wushuang stepping into the crack in the void was formed in his compound eyes. At the same time, in the Void Universe, in the Void Forbidden Land, in a cave in the 87th crack, a statue-like ancient figure covered in mud, sitting cross-legged in the depths of the cave, slowly opened his eyes. Someone has entered the Void Universe. In the Forbidden Void Land of the Void Universe, in the 87th crack, there was a cave that was 10,000 feet deep. The cave was filled with cobwebs. The spiders followed the cobwebs and climbed onto the walls. They kept spitting out silver threads as thick as hair from their mouths, shining with a cold light. In the middle of the cave, a mud sculpture suddenly shook. Shortly after, the earth began to crack and dust began to rise, revealing a strange old man with a face covered in tattoos and a body covered in spider fur. Who is this kid? The monstrous old man slowly opened his eyes, and a bright light flashed through them. Just now, when countless of the gadgets he had created died, he suddenly saw a scene. In the image, a black-robed young man with a cold expression stepped into the crack in the void. I need to report this to Lord Void God. The monstrous old man shook his head and immediately stood up. Immediately, the countless spiders on the wall followed the spider web and crawled toward the monstrous old man. Thump, thump, thump. In the blink of an eye, all the spiders crashed into the monstrous old man's body. The pale-faced old monster's face suddenly turned red. Whoosh! He took a step forward, and his body flickered, instantly disappearing from the deep pit. The 87th Void Rift. A huge building that looked like a beehive was built here, and it was filled with wormholes. The monstrous old man's body swayed, and he instantly appeared in the honeycomb-like building. He strode towards the middlemost wormhole. He strode in. The 34 Void Masters and the left and right Void Emissaries were all in the main hall. Each of the 34 Void Masters had the cultivation base of a 6-scar Void Master and were the main force in this great catastrophe war. Among them, many of them were old monsters who had survived the last great catastrophe war, and some were masters of ancient holy lands, sect masters of immortal orthodoxies, and so on. The previous sect master of the god-refining sect, Void Master Ba Huang, was also here. However, his position was extremely far back, close to the bottom. The left and right Void Emissaries and the one on the right were the white-haired, burly old man who Jian Wushuang had met once. On the throne in the main hall, there was a silk-like cocoon. Inside the cocoon, there was a thunderous sound of heartbeats. Seeing the strange old man walk into the hall, the 34 Void Masters and 2 Void Emissaries sitting in the seats all let out a soft gasp. Why is the sky spider old freak willing to come up? TSK. He must have stayed in that dark and damp cave for too long and wanted to come up and take a walk. Everyone laughed and joked. This sky spider old freak had outstanding strength and could be considered as one of the strongest among them. However, he was unsociable and unsociable. He usually stayed in the dark nest deep in the earth's core. The sky spider old man was expressionless. He ignored the teasing and knelt down on one knee toward the white silk cocoon at the head of the hall. He cupped his hands and said respectfully, "Sky spider greets Lord Void God." Bang! The intense sound of a heart beating came from the cocoon. Then, he heard a low and hoarse voice that sounded like a man and a woman coming out of the cocoon. "Sky Spider, what do you have to report?" "Lord Void God is wise." Sky Spider flattered him at first. Then he stood up and said in a deep voice, "Lord Void God, a sky spider larva that I took to investigate the divine power universe died in the off-world battlefield. Before it died, it made a good discovery." "Oh, a good discovery." The 34 Void Masters in the hall raised their eyebrows slightly. For the sky spider old monster to come out of the deep pit of his nest to report, it must be more than a good discovery. "Tell me." "Yes." Sky spider old freak nodded and replied, "Lord Void God, please take a look." With that, sky spider old man waved his right hand and an image appeared in the hall. In the battlefield of the godly power universe, a young man with a cold and handsome face, wearing a loose black robe and a hood, strode into the crack in the void. Everyone's heart skipped a beat when they saw this. "What? The people from the divine power universe have entered." Eh? What was going on? If the divine power universe had entered our void universe, we should have sensed it immediately. Why didn't I sense someone coming from our 87th crack? Why is it like this? Everyone said in surprise. As for the cocoon, it fell into silence. Only after a long while did the chrysalis make a sound again. "Check all the cracks in the void forbidden land and capture the person from the divine power universe." As soon as he said that, everyone was stunned at first, then they reacted, and a look of surprise flashed in their eyes. Could it be that there were other cracks in the void that could travel between the two universes in the void forbidden land? Yes. The 34 Void Masters responded respectfully and stood up to check the cracks in the void. The hall quickly quieted down, leaving only the left and right emissaries and the strange trembling cocoon. When the 34 Void Masters walked out of the hall, no one noticed that Void Master Ba Huang, who was walking at the back, had an uncertain look on his face. That person and Wushuang seemed to be somewhat similar. Void Master Ba Huang squinted his eyes and muttered to himself. The suspicion he had for Jian Wushuang that had been dispelled long ago immediately surged into his mind again. For some reason, he felt a little uneasy. However, he did not tell Void God about this. Instead, he contacted one of the 5 great grand elders of the God Refining sect, Elder Chengu. This person was the backup that Void Master Ba Huang had left in the God Refining sect. Every once in a while, he would report to him about the matters of the God Refining sect. Could also be said that Elder Chengu was a chess piece for Ba Huang sect to monitor Jian Wushuang in the God Refining sect. "Chengu, let me ask you, has there been anything strange about Wushuang recently?" Ba Huang asked in a deep voice. Reporting to Lord Sect Master, Wushuang has been in seclusion in the Sect Master's main hall the entire time. "I didn't notice anything unusual." "Closed-door cultivation?" Ba Huang muttered to himself and said, "Chengu, immediately go to the Sect Master's hall to see Wushuang and see if he's still there." "Now?" Elder Chengu was taken aback. "Now. Immediately. Immediately." A cold light flashed in the eyes of Void Master Ba Huang. "All right." Instantly, Elder Chengu's voice rang out in Ba Huang's mind. After hanging up, Void Master Ba Huang sneered in his heart. If Wushuang was really in the Sect Master's hall, then Wushuang's suspicion would naturally be cleared and his suspicion of Wushuang would also be completely removed. And if he was not, there was a flash of killing intent in the eyes of Void Master Ba Huang. He wanted to let Wushuang taste the price of deceiving him and regret being born in this world. Licking his lips, Void Master Ba Huang looked bloodthirsty. A gust of cold wind blew past. Void Master Ba Huang looked up at the sky, his heart growing colder. In his mind, Wushuang's figure and the black-robed figure that he had seen stepping into the crack in the void in the main hall kept overlapping and then separating. Wushuang, I hope you won't disappoint me. A moment later, Elder Chungu's message was connected to him. Chungu, what's the situation? Void Master Ba Huang asked indifferently, his voice devoid of any emotion. Reporting to Lord Sect Master, I just saw Sect Master Wushuang in the Sect Master's main hall. There was nothing unusual about Sect Master Wushuang, and his cultivation seemed to have improved. His mental state was also quite good. Elder Chungu's voice rang in the mind of the Void Master Ba Huang. Then he asked doubtfully, Lord Sect Master, is there something the matter with Sect Master Wushuang? Is there nothing unusual? Void Master Ba Huang did not answer Chungu. Instead, he narrowed his eyes. In his mind, Jian Wushuang's and the black-robed man's overlapping and separating figures had been completely separated. In his heart, he heaved a sigh of relief. If Jian Wushuang was really a spy sent by the Divine Power Universe, he would naturally kill him without mercy. However, at the same time, the God-refining sect and Void Master Ba Huang would become a laughingstock in the Void Universe. To let a spy from another universe become the sect master of the God-refining sect. This was simply absurd. Furthermore, Void Master Ba Huang's heart skipped a beat. He was afraid that Lord Void God would think that the God-refining sect was colluding with the Divine Power Universe. That would be a big problem. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang had been staying in the God-refining sect. It seemed that he had nothing to do with the black-robed man. Clearing his thoughts, Void Master Ba Huang said coldly, Don't ask what you shouldn't be asking. All right, continue to keep an eye on the sect. If anyone has any abnormal situation, report to me at once. After saying that, the Void Master Ba Huang hung up the transmission. He took a step forward and turned into a stream of light, starting to investigate the cracks in the void. Outside the void forbidden land, Jian Wushuang's speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had covered tens of millions of miles and completely disappeared from the sight of the void forbidden land. A few days later, at the main gate of the God-refining sect, the two disciples in charge of guarding the gate were still the same as last time. Sigh, it's so cold and miserable. When will this job of guarding the door end? The disciple on the left named Luo, he raised his head and sighed. Ha 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 ha. It's great to be a gatekeeper. No one usually comes here, so it's quiet. The disciple on the right, Shi Lang, laughed. Just as the two of them were chatting and joking around. Suddenly, their vision blurred, as if a black shadow had flashed past their eyes. When the two of them looked again, they saw nothing. Hey, Shi Lang. Do you think I'm having problems with guarding the door every day? I've been seeing things recently. Luo, he mumbled. Maybe. Even I'm seeing things now, let alone you. Sigh. Keep enduring. The two of them shook their heads and sighed for a while before they continued their banter. They had completely forgotten about what had happened earlier. At the same time, Jian Wushuang had already stepped into the sect master's hall. He pushed down his hood and pulled his black robe. Instantly, the black robe disappeared and was replaced by the white robe that represented the position of the sect master of the God-refining sect. His facial features changed, and his ears became long and sharp. In an instant, he turned from Jian Wushuang to the sect master of the God-refining sect, Wushuang. He reached out and pressed on a protruding stone behind the throne in the hall. Suddenly, the wall behind the hall let out a muffled sound, and the wall automatically pulled open. Jian Wushuang stepped in. Behind the sect master's main hall was a secret room, which was also his sleeping palace. The 8 trigrams formation continued to spin. In the center of the diagram, there was a figure that looked exactly like him, sitting cross-legged and cultivating. It was the Tarot Divine Corpse. Seeing Jian Wushuang come in, the divine corpse of the Tarot quickly stood up and lowered his head. My true self. Jian Wushuang nodded and pressed his hand on the head of the divine corpse of Tarot. Suddenly, his consciousness was pulled away from the divine corpse of Tarot and returned to Jian Wushuang's body. Instantly, the light in the eyes of Tarot, which had been in high spirits, quickly faded away. it became stiff again and returned to its original appearance. As for Jian Wushuang, he closed his eyes and carefully felt the memories in his consciousness. These memories were all of the events that happened when the Tarot Divine Corpse took over as the sect master. Oh, Elder Chingu had come? And after stammering and asking a few random questions, he left in a hurry. Jian Wushuang could not help but frown. He did not have much of a relationship with Elder Chingu. In fact, it could be said that they had never even met before. Why would Elder Chingu suddenly come to find him? And even pretended to be concerned? It's a little strange. Jian Wushuang pondered for a moment, but he couldn't figure it out, so he simply gave up. However, when he flipped through the memories again, a hint of anger flashed across his face. The corpse of the Supreme Tarot, or rather, the corpse of the Supreme Tarot controlled by his consciousness, had almost killed Zhou Sha. In his memory, the corpse of the Supreme Tarot had taken his identity and held morning meetings every day. After the morning meetings, Zhou Sha, who was now his maidservant, was about to clean up the bedroom for the corpse of the Supreme Tarot when the corpse of Supreme Tarot teased her with a few words. He almost started a fire with his words and the red waves rolled. Bastard! Jian Wushuang trembled with anger and the veins on his forehead throbbed. He looked at Tarot Divine Corpse coldly. He wanted to throw a tantrum, but this was all under the control of his consciousness. That feeling was as if he wanted to lose his temper, but there was no one to vent it on. He was really aggrieved to the extreme. Jian Wushuang had been famous all his life. When had he ever let loose like this? It seems that I'd better not use the Divine Corpse clone technique in the future. Otherwise, I don't know what other tricks it will play. Jian Wushuang shook his head and sealed the secret skill in his mind. With a wave of his hand, Jian Wushuang's divine power entered Supreme Tarot's corpse. This time he had a smile on his face. Tarot Divine Corpse had broken through. Before he left, the cultivation of the corpse was at Primary Supreme Realm. However, when he checked it just now, the cultivation of the corpse had already reached the Intermediate Supreme Realm. This Tarot Divine Corpse is truly worthy of being the incarnation of the Supreme Tarot. Its potential is astonishing, and its cultivation speed is so fast. Jian Wushuang nodded in satisfaction and looked at the formation eye of the 8 trigrams of yin and yang. He continued to smile. Potential is one thing. A large part of the improvement is because the 8 trigrams formation is too terrifying. It has absorbed the corpse chi of the entire God-refining sect into one for its cultivation. I'm afraid that if the corpse of the Supreme Tarot stays at the eye of the formation, it will be able to advance to the top Supreme Realm without any obstacles.